from the North Sea, so once again plenty of cloud to start the day. A little bit fresher overnight, though it's still going to be quite a warm night to come across southwest England. So to start the day of the new working week, there will be some bits and bobs of cloud around. Plenty of clear skies though across the southwest, still very gusty here. Cloud a little bit thicker across parts of East Anglia, Lincolnshire, southern parts of Yorkshire. This thick enough to produce some light outbreaks of rain and drizzle. Lots of sunshine to start the day across Northern Ireland, and once again some bits of cloud across Scotland to start the day. But the difference tomorrow across Scotland is that a lot of that cloud will clear away, bringing plenty of blue skies here. And that's a very similar story elsewhere across the country as well. Some cloud, but this lifting and breaking eventually through the morning, and lots of clear skies across the country. Still very gusty across southern coasts, and a good enough breeze around eastern areas just to bring some relief from the heat. So temperatures more towards the mid-20s here, but still reaching the high 20s, possibly the low 30s across parts of the south. Now Tuesday is very much a rinse and repeat. Some thick cloud in the morning, gradually lifting and breaking, and lots of clear skies across the country by the afternoon. Still quite gusty across some southern coasts, and still that slight temperature difference where it's a bit cooler across eastern areas and still very warm in the south. And this picture continues for the rest of the week. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a Great British Giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now.
and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, "We saw you on television." I say, "Oh yes, on what?" "On GB News."
Hello, are you the famous Sue? The whole crew with me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GBNews family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again. You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
At this point, there is still no information to suggest that this is a terrorism-related incident. There is nothing to suggest that it was politically motivated.
Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering former MP Anne Widdecombe. GB News was on the ground today in Devon to see the touching floral tributes to a political heavyweight. Also,
do you think that visibly Jewish people are safe on the streets of London?
the police have long been under scrutiny after a spate of violent attacks have left the British Jewish community feeling under siege. Breaking tonight, police are to get an extra £250 million in funding to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism. But is it enough? Also, just whisper it, ladies and gentlemen, but it just might be coming home. We will be, of course, looking back at that nerve-jangling, gutsy win for England over Norway last night as they booked their place in the World Cup semi-finals against the Argies. And on that, they just can't let it go, can they? That was the Argentinian players invoking the Falklands in a chant in their dressing room. The country's foreign minister has renewed the claim to the islands in what will undoubtedly give the upcoming clash on the pitch more of an edge. Also,
commercial shipping can't be terrorized in the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously the memorandum of understanding between the parties was always performance-based.
that was an interview where US Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker warned of overwhelming force. Well, with contradictory statements issued by the US and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz and an intensifying exchange of fire between the two countries, are the rivals at risk of returning to all-out war. And
a friend of mine for a long time. We don't always agree, but that's okay too. But he's a great guy, a great politician actually, and a terrific person who loves the estate, Senator Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you.
a hugely significant figure in American politics. Tributes have been pouring in as Washington reels from the death of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina at the age of 71. What does his trajectory from never Trumper to one of the president's most staunch allies say about politics in America? We'll discuss that all and more on The Late Show Live. I'm Will Kingston. Welcome to The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen. Joining me this evening, we have a heavyweight clash in London. It's Jonathan Liss against Paul Cox, and in Washington, D.C., the former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio, Matt Terrell, and Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Simon Hankinson. Thank you one and all for joining me. Let's move on to the incredibly sad news of the death of Anne Widdecombe and the latest that we have on this story, and it is a quickly evolving story. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering the former MP Anne Widdecombe. Ms Widdecombe was found dead at her home in Devon on Thursday. Police believe she was killed nearly 24 hours earlier, around midday. Earlier, GB News national reporter Jack Carson was in Devon as people paid their respects to the late Anne Widdecombe and sent us this report.
Well, here, right opposite the Dartmoor National Park, more floral tributes are being laid for Anne Widdecombe in her memory. Of course, we had an update today from the police in terms of their murder investigation, but the focus very much here, not far from the property she bought in 2008, just before she retired as a Member of Parliament in 2010, has been paying tributes and their respects. In the last few hours or so, Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice, joined by their spokesperson for Home Affairs, Zia Youssef, other members of Parliament like Lee Anderson and Danny Kruger, were all here paying their own tributes, laying their own wreaths. As you can see, these floral tributes behind me still being added to by members of the public now. One of them reads, "In respect and memory to Anne Widdecombe, a brave and dedicated lady, rest in peace." Ultimately, there is a real sense now of this community coming together to grieve the loss of Anne Widdecombe. She was so active in this community. There are so many things that we've heard, so many stories we've heard people tell about how she impacted their lives, both here for those people that live in this community, but also widely across politics and beyond. After the tributes and the wreath laying by members of Reform UK, Danny Kruger spoke to me. Here's what he said.
Anne Widdecombe was such a big figure in politics. I mean, growing up, before I met her, very aware of this punchy, colourful, very much, very principled character who obviously fell out with people, but not out of ill will, but because she had convictions and they didn't. So I got to know her in the last 5 or 10 years, always impressed by her kindness, her faith. I did a debate with her in a church once. She was absolutely brilliant. And talking about politics itself, she had a very clear idea of what it is that we need to do in this country. It's about getting back to basic, decent principles of public life and organising our society around some foundational values. So she had a very strong set of underlying convictions, but she was always light-hearted, always friendly, always charming on the surface. And that combination is, I just think, a wonderful combination.
Danny Kruger there speaking to me after Reform UK had held a tribute service to Anne Widdecombe here today, just by the Dartmoor National Park. A couple of hours ago, we got the latest from Devon and Cornwall Police. They confirmed that it was 9 p.m. yesterday evening that they arrested a 28-year-old man who they describe as a white British national in Rotherham in South Yorkshire. Counter-terrorism officers from the northeast as well as South Yorkshire Police had helped to assist in that arrest. But Devon and Cornwall Police still quick to say to people that they have no information to suggest that this is related to terrorism. Also saying in a press conference earlier today that they are not looking for anyone else in connection with the murder of Anne Widdecombe, saying as well that they do not believe that this was politically motivated and that they don't believe that this was terrorism related. But to every single possible motive, they say they are keeping an open mind. There'd been a huge mass appeal for public information. The press conference earlier confirmed that 120 different people had put information into their major incident portal to try and help the police gather exactly the facts of this case. They say that they don't believe there is any wider threat to the public, and they continue to question that 28-year-old man who they describe as a white British national in police custody this afternoon.
Well, first and foremost, strength and love to the friends and family of Anne Widdecombe. She was a titan of British politics and a thoroughly good person. I want to get some reflections from my panel. Jonathan, I'll start with you. You were obviously on the other side of the political divide to Anne Widdecombe. At the same time, the line that stood out to me in that particular report from Jack was from Danny Kruger, who said she did fall out with people because she had convictions and they didn't. In some respects, she was one of the last great conviction politicians, and if nothing else, our political class would be better if more people went in with firm beliefs as opposed to pursuing power for power's sake.
Well, I mean, I think it's a slightly strange comment that Danny Kruger made, and if I can say, a slightly unnecessary one. We don't, in respecting and remembering Anne Widdecombe, we don't need to sort of denigrate her opponents. Plenty of people in politics have convictions. I think you have convictions. I happen to disagree with them, but I've never doubted that you have principles. Likewise, almost all my opponents. I very rarely meet people on this programme. I think you're just saying that stuff you don't believe. They have convictions.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. I actually don't think that's what he meant in that comment. I think he was trying to look at the positives of her personality, but be that as it may.
No. The point is that, look, the thing that Widdecombe had in common with a lot of politicians is that she really believed what she said. I've never doubted that she believed everything she said. Whether that makes it better or worse in some cases is beside the point. I disagree with her vehemently, but I always believed that she believed what she said, and she said it with extreme intellect and resolve, and I respect that as well. She was an extremely accomplished orator. In Parliament, she was an excellent parliamentary debater. She had a ferocious wit, clearly, and intelligence, and that is to be respected. And it has to be said that a lot of people in politics and public life don't share those attributes, and so I respect that. I think I think there is a tendency to become a little bit saccharine sometimes when people die. I won't sugarcoat the tremendous objections I had to her politics, which I very disagree with, but in a way that's beside the point, because what we're dealing with here is not only the death of a politician, but the manner in which that politician has died, and that I think that is in a way the more pressing of the two at the moment. I think the time will come where we can remember Widdecombe for the politician she was, but at the moment there is obviously a bigger conversation to be had about politician safety and all these other issues. We will get to that very soon, but it is important. I think it is important that we do remember this figure initially before that gets lost in again, rightly, the investigation that is to come. Paul, your reflections? Yeah,
Anne Widdecombe was a deeply principled, outspoken but decent person, and she was led by her faith. She didn't move politically. The only thing I can think of that she ever changed her mind on was that she moved from Anglican to the Roman Catholic Church. Right.
She became a staunch. She never advocated once leaving the European Union while she was a member of Parliament, and now then she became an outspoken Brexiter. So the idea that she didn't move, people moved and she moved with them.
So let's not have that debate now. Let's have that debate another time.
Well, it's not a debate. It's a fact. She didn't believe in Brexit, then she did believe in it. That's a change.
OK, I'll take your word for it for now. But she never moved in terms of her principle, as far as I'm concerned. The world moved around her, which is why she stayed where she was. It's why she was a Conservative, why she became a Brexit MEP, why she then was later connected with Reform, because that's where she stayed and the political world moved alongside it. We know this. We know this from the fact that if you were a centrist in 1996, like myself, you're likely to be considered far right now. But Anne Widdecombe was someone that showed a lot of determination. She failed to get to Parliament in 79, in 83. She was not voted in until 87. She was in from 87 to 2010. That's 23 years. She served as pension minister from 95 to 97. Just 2 short years, but in that time visited every single prison. Every single prison the UK had between 95 and 97. She visited because she wanted to reform the prison service. She wanted prisoners to be held in higher regard than they were. She wanted them to have better living standards so that when they came out into society, they were better people. That was part of her Christian faith. Anne Widdecombe didn't deserve anything that's happened to her. She certainly hasn't deserved the vitriol that we've seen from certain aspects of the political spectrum. And I think she should be remembered for being a principled, decent human being.
I think that I don't know I haven't seen any vitriol personally. I'm not denying that. I'm not doubting that there might be some certain corners of Twitter who will be
blue skies where you'll find the vitriol.
Well, look, I think that Paul, we talk a lot about political correctness on the show, and you are the last person I'd expect to defend wokery. And I think that Anne Widdecombe herself will be the last person to expect her comments to be sugarcoated. She said some things which she herself defended, and so I don't know why we need to sort of pussyfoot around them. She made some extremely, what I considered at the time to be disgraceful remarks about homosexuality, for example. Now, I'm saying, what I said to you to start this is I'm not sure this is the time to talk about this.
But you just did.
No, because Paul is saying, well, look at all the things she did and all the decency. And I think, well, if you're going to have that conversation about her political legacy, then it's only right that we talk about some of the things that she actually said and actually believed. I didn't necessarily want to have that conversation, but if we are going to have that conversation, then I don't think we can just have a hagiography. You know, there are things, and by the way, it's not, and these are actual quotes that she's saying. It's not sort of my extrapolations. These are things she said about gay people. I remember
I'll
when I
very
was growing
quickly
up as well.
respond to that. I'm simply not going to debate that now. I was asked the question on my thoughts about Anne Widdecombe, and I'm doing it at a time where I spent most of the weekend with people that knew her, cared about her, have spoken very fondly and incredibly upset about her passing for a whole raft of reasons. And I have seen some incredible vitriol. And I do think that to show you some respect, I do believe that it is worth having that debate, just not now, not in the wake of her death.
Can I add as well, I've been taken aback by the amount of gay people who knew Anne very well, who were friends with Anne, who came out and said that they had a wonderful and warm friendship with her, despite some of her socially conservative views on gay marriage, for example. Darren Grimes came out and said that on the Saturday Five on Saturday.
I'm not saying, let me be clear, I'm not saying that Anne Widdecombe, I didn't know her personally, I met her briefly when I was at school. And, you know, again, on the one hand, there we have a convention when someone dies that we don't talk about the things that they said that might have been controversial, might have upset people. On the other hand, this on the channel of free speech of all places is a place where Anne Widdecombe, someone who relished debate and someone who was not afraid of her opinions, certainly was not afraid of expressing her views, did not hold fire, did not suffer fools. She, I believe, would actually welcome people saying that she actually said these things and have that debate, because she's not around to have that debate anymore. So, for example, I can tell you that she came to my school when I was about 16, and she was saying some really, really right things about single-parent families. And having come from a single-parent family myself, I was very upset about it. And I spoke to her afterwards to ask her what she meant about sort of, broken families and single-parent families, etc. And she didn't really give me a satisfactory answer. But I respect that she had conservative views, absolutely. And I don't believe that she would want us to pussyfoot around them. What I am saying, I don't deny that I've heard from lots of people who said that she was a very good friend to them, and I wouldn't gainsay that or minimise it for a moment. Clearly, she had a lot of very, very strong qualities. I've mentioned many of them myself. What I think that we shouldn't do is to minimise some of the more extreme aspects of her politics, I believe. And a lot of those things actually might have mellowed, in fact, Paul, because haven't heard her mention homosexuality for a long time. She certainly did that when I was a gay teenager, being buffeted by the Conservative Party's relentless opposition to gay rights, and in there, which made my life a misery, actually, growing up, thinking I could never live in a society as myself, because Section 28, having a 3-line whip on, the promotion of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship was still the Conservative Party policy at that time.
Paul, right of reply before we go to the break.
Yeah, look, so I'm not gay, and I don't have the same axe to grind, and Jonathan has every right to express his opinion, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation. And what I will say is, should Jeremy Corbyn have passed away this weekend, or Keir Starmer in such tragic circumstances, I wouldn't be here right now, right today, debating how much I dislike their policies. I'd just be talking about their contribution to public life and how people supported them, and that's all I really want to do with regards to Anne Widdecombe right now.
We've got to go to break, unfortunately, but we'll be covering Anne in the next 2 hours. For what it's worth from me, I think her socially conservative views, some of them I agreed with, some of them I didn't, but I always admired the fact that she continued to stick with those beliefs, even if the mainstream media and the mores of the time maybe were moving in one direction. She had those beliefs, she stuck with them. I believe if more politicians were like that, our political class would be in a much better place. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
Do you think that visibly Jewish people are safe on the streets of London?
The police have been under scrutiny after a spate of violent attacks have left the British Jewish community feeling under siege. Breaking tonight, police are to get an extra £250 million in funding to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism. Is it enough? This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News. Well, breaking tonight, more than £250 million is set to be invested in increasing policing in Jewish communities. This, of course, comes after a spate of violent attacks against Britain's Jewish community in recent months. The government has said that the increased funding is so Jewish communities can live and celebrate their faith free from fear. The increased funding will see an increase in police presence, patrols and security provided outside synagogues and schools. This all comes as the national terror threat level was raised from substantial to severe in April. So, will this increased funding be enough to combat the rising threat to Britain's Jewish communities? With me now, terrorism and security expert Roger McMillan. Roger, thanks for joining me. I'll repeat that question. Is this funding enough?
Let's deal with it first of all. £250 million over 3 years is a phenomenal amount of money that is going to be given to the police in not just London, but also Manchester and other areas with significant Jewish communities. And we are going to see an increase in frontline policing to reassure the Jewish communities that they can live, and exactly as Kirk Starmer said, and they can practice their faith without fear of repercussion. But what this does, this in many ways, this is a sticking plaster over the real problems, and we need still to tackle the root cause of some of this anti-Semitic behaviour that we're seeing in the UK today.
What are those root causes?
Well, I mean, you see organisations such as the IRGC, which are the Iranian, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which operate with pretty much freedom in the UK. It is an organisation that's been prescribed
pretty much across the world, certainly in Europe, most recently in Argentina, South America, and obviously in the United States. But they still, using their soft influence networks, will continue to attack not just the Persian communities, but the Jewish communities that we have in the UK. And with the recent royal assent of the state threats legislation, this has got to be something that Shabana Mahmood and the Home Office has got to start looking at prescribing with immediate effect. We've got to tackle this root problem.
Well, the government is planning to ban the IRGC. I would argue it is belated, and that's a kind way of putting it. But do you give them any credit for actually making that decision?
I think you've got to give them credit. Yes, it has taken way too long, and successive governments and success even earlier this year, we can't prescribe, we can't possibly prescribe. But we now have the legislation in place, and they've got to use it. They've got to enforce this and give the powers to the security service and the police to actually bring people who are acting on behalf of hostile foreign states, such as in this case Iran. And we've got to bring these people to justice and shut down these soft influence networks that operate still in the UK.
Roger, I'd suggest there's another root cause, and it relates to those hostile foreign states. We've had an immigration policy over the last 20 years in which many people have come from states which I would suggest are systemically and culturally hostile to Israel and to Jews. To what extent does immigration play into this story?
I think the immigration part, certainly in the UK, we've got to look at that in detail, because we do have people who are operating here in the UK whose values and standards and etc. are not in line with that of the UK. We're a tolerant society, and if you're coming to this country, then you must abide by the laws of the UK, and that includes allowing other people of other faiths to practice their own religions without fear and without with recourse to violence.
Do you think that this particular measure should be matched for other religions, or do you think there is a unique threat to Jews in this country which justifies this particular spend?
I don't think we should separate them out. I mean, there are moderate people from across all faiths in the UK, but what has been particularly noticeable are some 3,500, more than that, 3,500 attacks on the Jewish community in the last year. And there are more. It's the microaggressions, the hatred that people experience. Just recently, I was coming out of a tube station, and before the elections, people were handing out party political information. A Jewish lady was in front of me. They retracted their arms. She bowed her head. She had to move through this sort of gauntlet of fear and did nothing. But of course, that's not going to be reported. And this is a kind of root cause we need to tackle in the country.
Roger, thanks very much for your time and your insights. That was Roger McMillan there. Let's go to my panel. Paul, I'll start with you. I don't think anyone really would argue that this isn't welcome, but at the same time, to Roger's point, there are root causes here which also need to be addressed. What do you make of it?
Of course there are, and I see the £250 million as almost an admittance that there is a much greater societal issue than has first been admitted, particularly by this Labour government. This is obviously a knock-on effect from what's going on around the world. It's a knock-on effect from the Muslim immigration issue within the country. One thing we don't say, although we do say on here, is that a lot of that hatred towards Jews has come from either misinformation about Israel or the fact that they are inherently disliked by sections of the Muslim faith. That £250 million is a huge cost just to have community cohesion, which is normally going the other way, let's be honest. So for me, this is a step in the right direction, but should we really be having to spend £250 million just to protect one community? I mean, where's that going to stop? Because this isn't going away because politically people aren't challenging it enough.
Simon, Paul's just said that this is bigger than the United Kingdom. This is a problem across the Anglosphere. I would suggest that now there is this very potent threat on the left of this Islamo-communist or perhaps Islamo-socialist alliance of progressive identity politics warriors who are aligning with socially conservative Islamists in many instances, and they are having increasing political sway both in America and the UK. How is that particular phenomena playing out in your country?
Well, yeah, I think it's exactly right. Across the Anglosphere, you're bringing in people who have beefs from home, whether it be South Asia, the Middle East, and they bring them intact to the United States, and that includes anti-Semitism and a rampant hatred of Israel and of Jews. And I'm sorry to say that it manifests itself in ways that just simply weren't there when I was a child growing up in the U.S. and visiting back home in Britain. There just weren't any obvious anti-Semitic assaults or knife crimes and things that are going on now. But in the United States, we've been used to this for a while. Our synagogues, our Jewish schools are heavily guarded. This has been true for at least the last 10, 15, 20 years from before 9/11. I would say by and large, Jews are safe in the United States and don't feel threatened the way they might in France now and maybe Germany and the UK and other parts of the world. But I'm not sure this is something you can get on top of with kumbaya or spending £250 million on extra security. You have to take note of the populations that you're bringing in and what they bring with them. And right now, I'm afraid that's a lot of hatred.
Matt, two questions relating to what Simon just said. Do you agree with his argument that Jews generally are safer in the United States than Europe? And if that is the case, why?
Well, look, many people I know of the Jewish faith here in the United States who don't feel safe. I don't disagree with many of the aspects that Simon said, but just building on what Simon said, this is absolutely a problem in the UK and Europe and in the United States. And Will, you hit the nail on the head. Spot on. This is a problem on the left. You see the comments made by social media influencers like Hassan Piker. You see comments made by Democrat candidates running for public office in the United States when they refuse to condemn what occurred on October 7th. You have many people, many Democrats, who believe that the governor of Pennsylvania was not selected as Kamala Harris's running mate during the 2024 presidential election because he's of the Jewish faith. This is a problem on the left, and the left has refused to condemn this. You see comments from Mayor Mamdani in New York claiming that he's going to arrest Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, if he gets to New York. These are insane comments. These are insane comments that only fuel this growing anti-Semitic behavior. So whether it's in the UK or the US, there's no question I think people of the Jewish faith do not feel safe right now. That is fundamentally wrong. People should absolutely feel safe. You look at our college campuses. I remember seeing a video just a few months ago at Harvard where a student of the Jewish faith was blocked from getting into his classroom. We've seen murders here in Washington, D.C., where I am today. People of the Jewish faith killed because of their faith. This is a massive problem that the left in particular has not taken on. They've allowed this to occur on the far left aspects of the Democrat Party. What this means going forward here in the United States is that the Democrat nominee in 2028 will not truly be someone who's an ally of Israel. That's a major problem, both for the United States, for the UK. I agree, you should not have to spend this kind of money to keep the people of the Jewish faith safe. But sadly, history sometimes repeats itself. We've seen before in world history the people of the Jewish faith under attack. It's important that we all stand together in support of people of the Jewish faith, of all faiths. No one should be under attack because of their faith.
Jonathan.
I think it is a total disgrace to conflate Israel with Jewish people, and I'm afraid that is why we are seeing so much more anti-Semitism in this country. It's because people, whether it's the Israeli government or their supporters, or indeed people who hate Israel, they see what Israel does. Benjamin Netanyahu claims to be acting for the Jewish people. Every single bomb dropped is being dropped in my name and the name of every other Jewish person. Every single atrocity being committed against the Palestinians is again being done in my name. I never asked for that, I never signed up for it, and I've never asked Israel to speak for me. That is why people are conflating Israel and Jews. The Israeli government is doing it, and that is why Jews are much less safe now than they were 3 years ago. It is a complete nonsense, by the way, to say the Jewish people were safe. There was this sort of halcyon days in the 1970s or 80s where Jewish people were safe. Jewish people have always been in danger. People have been doing security duty at my synagogue all my life. I do it myself twice a year. So I certainly won't take any lectures about Jewish people's safety. Of course there needs to be investment in Jewish people's safety. Absolutely Jewish people are at risk. I don't personally feel unsafe, but then again, I would not go around walking around London, for example, with a Jewish kippah on, for example, because I think that would put a target, and that's on my back, and that is that's awful. And of course there's a problem. But to say that somehow it's because of imported culture from Muslims is absolutely disgraceful and also untrue.
But stop and just think about it on first principles. If you bring in hundreds and thousands of people that come from cultures that are across the board have hostile attitudes to Jewish people.
No, no, they don't. They have hostile attitudes to Israel.
Okay, Simon, you can pick that up.
That's not true. It's just not true. You can look at the surveys that we do here in the United States about attitudes towards Israel and attitudes towards Jews, and you will see that it is not true. There is a hostility that people are taught from their earliest years. If you're an immigrant here from Palestine, whatever that we're calling that part of the world, from Syria, from Jordan, of Palestinian heritage, you are taught from the cradle, in many cases, to hate Jews and to hate Israel and to conflate the two. So I'm afraid
to hate Israel.
I don't agree with that.
People study taught to hate Israel, and the Israeli government does a lot of very hateful things. So people have every right to hate Israel, but hating Jewish people is a completely separate issue, of course. And it's notable, actually, that a lot of Jewish New Yorkers have recently been to the West Bank, and they've been welcomed with open arms by the Palestinians there, because it's not about who they are, it's about what they believe.
Okay. We'll leave it there. The Prime Minister
you have candidates in the Democrat Party.
Matt, we've got to leave it there, but we will. We've got to leave it there, unfortunately, but we will pick this up at a later point in the show. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has said the rise in anti-Semitism we have seen in recent years is a test of our values as a country, and tackling it has been central to my leadership from day one. This is why earlier this year I brought together leaders from business, education, health, policing and civil society at Downing Street to drive a coordinated response across every corner of our society. We have also taken action across government to protect Jewish communities, tackle anti-Semitism in schools, universities and public services, and strengthen our response to extremism and hate, including online. Today's funding builds on that work, delivering a step change in protection and policing so Jewish communities can live and celebrate their faith free from fear. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. Well, it was a famous night in the history of English football. We will be looking back at that gutsy win for England over Norway last night as they have booked their place in the World Cup semi-finals against Argentina. This is The Late Show Live on GBNews.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Well, we are reaching the business end of the 2026 World Cup, and England are still in the mix after a thrilling performance by star Jude Bellingham. Carried the Three Lions over the line against Norway. A 3-1 victory for Argentina over Switzerland sets up a mouth-watering clash against the South American side in the semi-finals. Consider it a Falkland Islands rematch. The two countries have had a long-standing rivalry both on and off the pitch, from the hand of God in 1986 to David Beckham sending off in a clash 12 years later. When these two teams go toe-to-toe on a football pitch, it is guaranteed to be a fiery affair. And of course, there is a World Cup final place on the line. What can we take from the English performance last night? And are England starting to become too dependent on Jude Bellingham? And of course, what do we have to look out for as we prime ourselves for this blockbuster clash against Argentina? No better person to speak to than senior reporter at the Daily Mail, Nick Pisa. Nick, great to chat to you again. We spoke last night in the amidst the excitement after the win. You've had 24 hours to reflect on that game. What are your more considered thoughts on that performance from England?
Well, yeah, I think, as you said in your introduction there, this is going to be a battle of the giants, isn't it? On Wednesday, we got the in the semi-finals, we have the top 4 seeds left, which I think is exactly what FIFA were looking for. I suppose they were a bit disappointed that Brazil maybe didn't get any further, but we have France v Spain in one semi-final, and then we have, as you say, this battle of the giants: England, Argentina in the other semi-final in Atlanta on Wednesday. The players today took the day off. They had time to rest and recover, and they're obviously back in full training tomorrow. As you said, we're at the business end here, so there's very little time now between games. They're going to be back on the training pitch on Monday, and then the following day they will be flying to Atlanta to give their press conference, to have their training there. So, yeah, a lot for Thomas Tuchel to think over. I mean, we saw him as he came off the pitch yesterday. He wasn't at all happy with the performance, was he? He said that England got lucky. They were sloppy. They weren't fast enough, and he said that they made a lot of technical mistakes. And then conversely, we saw Jude Bellingham saying to him, saying in his press conference, "Well, hey, hold on there, boss. It was tough out there. It was 35 degrees. It was very humid. It was hard work. We did our best, and we played out of our skins." So it would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall of that aeroplane when it took off yesterday from Miami and headed back to that training base in Kansas to see what the two of them had to say. Because as we know, there isn't. I mean, obviously they do respect each other. It's boss and top player, but there is a little bit of certainly there's no love lost between them, because as we know, last year Thomas Tuchel dropped him from the England squad, and also he said, I think it was last summer, he said that his mother found Bellingham's attitude on the pitch repulsive.
Will there be any wider ramifications for that comment? Obviously, Jude Bellingham has been the star of this World Cup, but it is unusual to hear a player so publicly rebuke a coach in that way. How does the coach actually go about mending that relationship?
Well, I would imagine he'll have maybe not him, but maybe one of his side coaches or assistant coaches maybe have a quiet with him. Although it's interesting to say, Will, that Harry Kane came out today and agreed with Thomas Tuchel and said, yes, we were sloppy, we did make mistakes, and we really need to up our game and raise our game if we are going to get into or beat Argentina and get into the final this time next Sunday, isn't it, more or less? Well, no, actually, in fact, by this time next Sunday, it'll all be over. We'll know if England are world champions or not, or if they're in the 3rd and 4th place playoff on the day before. I mean, let's not underestimate it. This is huge for England. They haven't been in a World Cup semi-final, since 2018. Again, they lost that to Croatia, but before that, it was Germany in 1990, and then
obviously, going back all the way, you mentioned the history. In 1966, England played Argentina in the quarterfinals. Obviously, of course, 1966 was the last time England won that game, but it was marred by some ferocious tackling from the Argentinians, and one of their players, Diego Retin, was sent off, and it led to the then coach, Alf Ramsey, calling them animals.
Well, apart from the obvious stop Messi, how do you beat Argentina?
That's a very good question. I'm no technical coach, but I think you've got to have someone on Messi. But they're a very technical side. They're a very skillful side. They're very quick. We should also say that at the same time, a lot of people are saying that, hold on a minute, they've had a lot of lucky breaks so far, haven't they? Was it Cape Verde took them to extra time, and they were beat. They won 3-2, and then Egypt. I mean, that game against Egypt, there was a lot of fouls and errors that weren't given, or mistakes made, by the referee in that game, and many are saying that, hold on a minute, this is a bit of a carve up here to try and get Argentina into the final and to ensure that Messi plays one more time in the World Cup final.
Well, I won't ask you for your prediction yet, but we will be speaking to you before the match on Wednesday, where I will ask you to put your money where your mouth is. Nick, thanks very much for chatting again.
Welcome.
Still ahead on The Late Show Live. We will be looking at your day's headlines. The Guardian goes with June heatwave killed 440 a day at its peak, says climate scientists. This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's papers. Let's go with The Guardian. They are going with June heatwave killed 440 a day at its peak, says climate scientists. I'll go to my panel in London first. Jonathan, my understanding is that the cold kills somewhere in the vicinity of 10 times the amount of people that the heat does in any given year in this country. Why haven't I seen that headline from The Guardian?
Because if we'd had, a cold wave of sort of minus 10 degrees for 10 days running, I expect there would be headlines like that. I think it's notable to say that the heat wave killed, in the same way that we used to talk about excess deaths during COVID. I think it's legitimate to talk about things that happen in this country that are causing people to die who wouldn't have died otherwise. That's entirely part of legitimate media discourse. Climate change, the reason we call it climate change nowadays, not global warming, is that it also includes increased cold temperature in winter. It includes sort of wildfires. It includes sort of more sort of hurricanes, etc. in certain parts of the world. It's about extreme weather. It's about extreme changes to the climate and weather. Not just about things getting hotter. Although of course things are getting hotter. There are more heat waves than there used to be. The last 25 years have been the hottest on record. These are just scientific facts.
Paul, are you concerned about this?
I'm not overly concerned about it. I do believe that we need to embrace air conditioning, and I do believe that we could take the money that we're spending on net zero and at least invest that in air conditioning. The facts are slightly different to the figures. 400 a day over that period equates to 2,700. As I said in the previous show, that's lower than the average deaths due to heat in an English summer. Unfortunately, we've commoditised fear. So we've taken fear and we're actively using it against the population to control a narrative. Now, it's not that I don't believe that the climate's changing or that we're having a heat wave, but I don't believe that we have to scare people to death in order to follow something. People will go with it if they believe it's true. They don't have to continually be told a lie. And what we are seeing, I think, is a lie from the climate zealots.
What's the lie, Paul?
The lie is that if we don't do something now, you will die.
No, no one is saying that. Are you saying that we shouldn't point out, if scientists can demonstrate that 440 people a day died from the unusual heat, that we somehow shouldn't mention that? Wouldn't that be kind of censorship? It's entirely legitimate to say that in a newspaper article, and that people can draw their own conclusions. It's not saying sort of recycle more or you'll be next.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, actually, because two things. First of all, you used the pandemic and the excess deaths. Great example, because that was also a load of bunkum, and that didn't help us whatsoever either. And that was a fear to maintain the narrative.
Say more people didn't die because of the pandemic.
No, and that's not what I'm saying. But the other thing, of course, is we're looking at in the nano and not in the macro again. So we're saying, oh my God, 440 people a day, which is not great. Of course it's not. But they died because they were old. They died because of lung disease. They died because they had problems with their kidneys and liver. Okay. They died because they didn't have good air circulation in the buildings they were in, or they were in care homes without air conditioning. So first of all, we need context. Second of all, we've talked about this endlessly now, but when the UK CO2 emission is worth 0.91% of the overall. China's is massive, the US is massive, India's massive. They're growing exponentially. That's going up at a rate that ours isn't. If we reduced ours, it simply wouldn't have the net impact.
I just want to get the US in here, because Paul is right that we have an incredibly easy argument, Simon, against net zero in this country because the UK doesn't impact the global climate, or at least it doesn't impact global emissions. It's about 0.9%. If you believe that global emissions is changing the climate, then the US does have a material impact. Should the US be doing more?
I think the US is doing a lot. But we also, we need to eat and we need to live. We made this country incredibly productive by air conditioning the South, where you couldn't work in the middle of the summer in an office, and have your paper not melt in your hands. Air conditioning has been an incredible innovation that's made us much more productive. It's made our lives much more comfortable. We all wish we didn't have to innovate in that way, and that Europe didn't have to adopt it, and the climate was the same as it was in 1820, but it isn't. So I agree with Paul, as usual, that we really ought to think about installing it in places where people are vulnerable, in the UK and in France and Germany. Regardless, it's not politics; it's just a fact. And net zero If we could persuade the Chinese and the Indians to join us and make efforts not to build a coal plant every week or so, then collectively we might be able to do something about it, but in about 100 years. You know, so all the math here, we're all going to be long dead before anything we do today to mitigate will make a difference.
Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, you don't have to be a scientist to know that it gets hot during the summer. We saw that during the summer of 1976. We've seen hot summers in 2026 in the UK. So look, the reality is it gets hot in the summer, and I can agree more. I think many people across the UK are upset when they see their government spending more on net zero and spending less on, you know, improving the infrastructure of old schools that do need air conditioning. Frankly, I was shocked to see people visiting from the UK here in the United States for the World Cup and seeing them shocked by how we had air conditioning in our buildings. You know, I absolutely think that the schools and other buildings in the UK should have air conditioning. I also think that when the UK...
I'll pause that there and I'll leave that there. I'm sorry, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's about 90% of houses in the US have air conditioning compared to about 10% in the UK. More coming up in the next hour, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us on the People's Channel, GB News.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This week brings more sunshine, remaining very warm, if not locally hot in some places, and still often rather windy across the south. Some spots of low cloud through the early hours of this morning. This will bring some rain across parts of East Anglia, central England, perhaps parts of Lincolnshire as well, eventually clearing through the course of the morning, and you can see plenty of clear skies across the UK for the afternoon. Away from the northeast of Scotland, some low cloud lingering here. Another very warm day on the cards, particularly across the south. We could still reach around 30 degrees Celsius here, but in a brisk easterly breeze, still feeling that little bit cooler along some eastern coasts. Now, later this evening, we could start to see a little bit of a change. Some more cloud pushing up across the south, eventually some showers, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. Otherwise, elsewhere across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, plenty of late evening sunshine to finish off the day. Clear skies, very similar across Scotland, though away from the northeast, where there'll be some low cloud around coastal areas. This eventually through the course of the night will continue to drag its way back westwards across Scotland. And that's a very similar picture elsewhere across England. Some moisture still feeding in from an easterly breeze off the North Sea, and this will progress its way westwards overnight. Any showers across the south soon clearing by the early hours of the morning, and a little fresher for some, but still across the south another warm night, temperatures not dropping past 16 to 17 degrees. Now on Tuesday, it's a very similar picture to what we've had the last few days. There will be some cloud around to start. It'll eventually clear through the morning, and then there'll be wall-to-wall blue skies across many areas. Still some lingering low cloud across the northeast of Scotland, perhaps lingering around some coastal areas, and a build of higher cloud across the south later, creating more hazy spells of sunshine. Otherwise, another hot day in the south, but still a little less warm across the east.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis,
in the car,
in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
we're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
At this point, there is still no information to suggest that this is a terrorism-related incident. There is nothing to suggest that it was politically motivated.
Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering former MP Anne Widdecombe. GB News was on the ground today in Devon to see the touching floral tributes to a political titan. Also,
Do you think that visibly Jewish people are safe on the streets of London?
the police have long been under scrutiny after a spate of violent attacks have left the British Jewish community feeling under siege. Breaking tonight, police are to get an extra £250 million in funding to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism. But is it just a band-aid solution? Also, it wasn't pretty at times, but it was an incredibly important night in the history of English football. We will be looking back at that nerve-jangling win for England over Norway last night as they booked their place in the World Cup semi-final against Argentina. Also, they lost, but they just can't let it go. That was the Argentina players invoking the Falklands in a chant in their dressing room. The country's foreign minister has renewed the claim to the islands in what will undoubtedly give the upcoming clash on the pitch even more of an edge. Also,
commercial shipping can't be terrorized in the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously the memorandum of understanding between the parties was always performance-based.
that was an interview where US Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker warned of overwhelming force. Well, with contradictory statements issued by the US and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz and an intensifying exchange of fire between the two countries, is this conflict at risk of returning to kinetic action? I'm Will Kingston and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live for a second hour. Joining me once again in London is my panel, political commentator Jonathan Liss and GB News contributor and the People's Gammon Paul Cox. In Washington, former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio, Matt Terrell and Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Simon Hankinson. Thank you for joining me once again, gentlemen. Let's move to a story which has shocked the country and sent shockwaves indeed through Westminster. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering former MP Anne Widdecombe. Miss Widdecombe was found dead at her home in Devon on Thursday. Police believe she was killed nearly 24 hours earlier, around midday. Paul, I'll go to you first. We reflected on her life and her career in the first hour. I want to now look at, well, what are some of the potential implications of this horrific event. Reform have said a few things. They have said, A, that this places a spotlight on the safety of politicians, keeping in mind that we still do not know what the motive is of this 28-year-old man, if indeed this suspect is the perpetrator, and we don't know that yet.
Or if he's charged.
Sorry?
If he's charged.
If he is charged. Reform have given all of their MPs 24-hour security protection. Nigel Farage has said that one of the possibilities is that this was premeditated. This man drove 300-odd miles with a wooden object, again allegedly from some reports in the papers, to Anne Widdecombe's house. Again, you can draw your own conclusions in that regard. Are politicians safe in this country?
I'm going to talk generalistically and try not to talk about specifics of the Anne Widdecombe case. However, Anne Widdecombe was a very prominent female MP, somebody who had direct and forthright views and wasn't afraid to talk about them. So irrespective of anything we know about her case, it does put a bit of a target on your back, particularly, and I will say this, if you're on the right of politics, because we've had decades and decades of people being told there is a left and wrong of politics. So if you're on the left, you're right and kind and lovely, and if you're on the right, in some way you must be associated with the Nazis and have terribly bad views that need to be stamped out. That's changing slightly because of places like GBNews and political parties like Reform. And Nigel Farage is right to be concerned. And I know he's right to be concerned by some of the reactions of some of the political commentators since the news came out on Friday. Immediately, if people weren't talking Anne down, what they were doing was quickly panicking over the fact the narrative was changing away from all the talk being about Nigel Farage and the money he'd received from his donors. Nigel Farage has said that he is using the £5 million donation for his own personal security. What this story with Anne Widdecombe sadly shows is that political leaders, particularly those with forthright and right-wing views, are in particular danger in this country. Now, if that is the case, then it's going to take all the wind, unfortunately, out of the sails of people who don't want us to hear that. And I think that's a big issue.
Jonathan, do you agree with Paul that whilst there is a threat to all politicians in this country, sadly, there is a heightened threat on the right relative to the left?
I didn't agree with a single word that Paul just said. I don't understand how Farage, people are trying to turn it away from the Farage conversation. Farage is the one who's bringing it back to the conversation about donations to Reform. So it's not his opponents who are trying to bring it back to that conversation. It's Farage himself. And it's also a complete nonsense that people on the left are not subject to political threats and violence.
I didn't say that, and I must admit, if that is how it came across,
it really
did
come across like that, Paul, I have to say. You were saying that people on the right face a particular threat. That's just, I think those are the words you said. That's simply not true. Ask any prominent female politician on the left if she has suffered rape threats, death threats, if she's had abusive, coming through. Diane Abbott, I think, has received more threats over email and more abuse over email than anyone else, and she's certainly not on the right. So I don't understand why we need to make this a partisan issue. Everyone deserves safety. There are crazy people on all sides of politics. There are people who are targeted on all sides of politics as well. Jo Cox was on the left. She was the first MP to be sort of murdered in goodness knows how many decades, 10 years ago this month. So we really do have to have a conversation about people's safety. But of course, Anne Widdecombe, contrary to what you suggested, was not an MP. She had been an MP. She hasn't been an MP since 2010. So if you can have a conversation about how MPs are protected, but that wouldn't have covered Anne Widdecombe.
She's a politician, is what I said. She's not an MP, not a serving MP, and hasn't been. But but a formidable and forthright
Right, but then how do we have the conversation about politician safety? Are we talking if we extend it to ex-politicians as well? That's the issue about what the state, what the responsibility of the state.
I want to bring in the US, and I'll start with Matt. I've very rudely cut him off on a couple of occasions this evening because I haven't been able to keep track of times effectively. Matt, we unfortunately are aware that the threats to prominent figures and politicians is increasing in the United States as well as the United Kingdom. Two questions for you. The first is, why do you think that is the case? And the second, following on from what we've just been discussing, do you think that there is a different threat to politicians on the right than the left?
I do. I think the proof is in the pudding, unfortunately. I mean, you see what happened with President Trump, where you had multiple assassination attempts against him. You saw what happened not just with politicians, but with those who stand up for conservative values who aren't politicians. Someone like Charlie Kirk, who was sadly killed. You see what's happening to someone like Congressman Scalise of Louisiana, who took bullets. A Republican congressman. And then you look to the UK. You look just to last year when Nigel Farage had a death threat on TikTok. There's much of the polling out there that shows far too many people on the left who believe that political violence can be justified. Now, obviously, with this specific case we're talking about, we need to let the investigation take its full course. We don't know if this was motivated by political violence or not. But, Will, to answer your question directly, I absolutely think this is a real problem on the left. I think you've seen massive violence on the left. There's no question that leaders on the left need to do more to talk down this kind of violence. When you call President Trump a fascist, that's a problem. To me, that kind of language only fuels political violence. That's a real problem. You need to have Democrats, in particular on the left, leaders who will call for peace. It's one thing to have peaceful discourse. It's another thing to take to violence. We should always stand on the side of peaceful discourse.
So at the same time, you would hear some on the left say that members of the right would use inflammatory language. They would say people like Donald Trump use inflammatory language all the time. How would you respond to Matt's assertion that this is a problem which is not unique to the left, but of a greater threat level to right-wing politicians relative to left-wing politicians?
Yeah, and I think that's just an observable fact. I mean, we have had politicians on the left and the right assassinated or assaulted in the United States. I mean, President Kennedy, obviously. We've had 5 presidents assassinated. But lately, if you look at the numbers of who is on the sort of watch list for terrorism and who is actually carrying out assaults of a political nature, the threat is coming more from the left than from the right. But I would agree there are an awful lot of high-profile politicians who are. No, it's just it's a fact. If you study terrorism and you study political violence, you can see the numbers.
One at a time.
A bit violent, Jonathan.
Well,
don't throw out the bait, Paul. But okay, we don't have figures at hand. I'll see if I can pull some up in the break. But Simon, let's go back to principles then. Why do you believe? I guess what are the principled or underlying reasons why there would be a disproportionate level of violence on the left side of politics to the right, in absence of the data at the moment?
Well, I think what has happened is the left, our campuses have been so radicalized that it has become normalized to talk about anyone who's slightly to the right of center as a fascist, and fascists are legitimate targets. You have the assassination of the head of United Healthcare by Luigi Mangione. You've got all these social media and TikTok videos that you can see in the United States after Charlie Kirk was killed, memes, and young people are being indoctrinated to believe that political violence in defense of Gaza, in defense of LGBTQ plus, etc. rights is a legitimate thing. And while we can have a range of opinions and should have, just talking in so-called inflammatory language does not make you a legitimate target for anybody. We don't kill people for their political views in this country, or we shouldn't anyway. We shouldn't normalize it. But unfortunately, that is increasingly happening.
We have Tobias Ellwood, former Defence Minister, on the line. I want to go to Tobias now before we continue this conversation. Tobias, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I want to start with the latest news that we know. There is someone who has been arrested, a 28-year-old man. We are unsure of the motives at this stage. What are your reflections on this tragedy and what we have seen in the last 24 hours?
Yes, I mean, a tragedy, it absolutely is. I was actually on media the morning that this story broke, and tributes were coming in right across the political spectrum, rightly, because she was such a formidable character. She brought colour and energy to political debate when often politics can be very, very grey indeed. I mean, she became known for an exceptionally forceful debating style and had a commanding presence in the Commons. We have monitors across the House of Commons, which tells you who's speaking in the chamber at any one time. And when her name flashed up, people would drop what they were doing and go in order to hear what she was actually saying. And she was very passionate about particular views as well. Strong social conservatism, particularly on issues such as law and order, criminal justice, and traditional values. What I enjoyed about her so much is that I wasn't on the same wing of the party as her. We were in the same party, but we could clash. We could have feisty debates. And the very next day, it was a reset and we could actually move forward. And there was no anger or that set in. She was very much a professional on that front. And because she was had this elder grandee statesman character across our party, everybody loved her and respected her. And I'm afraid that style of politics is much missed now. There are tribes within the Conservative Party, as there are in Labour Party as well. And sometimes they don't always see eye to eye. But too often now, if you're in a different wing of the party, you're not talked to, you're frowned upon, you are distanced in a way. And that's actually what led to so many the turnover of so many prime ministers because of the factional outbursts within our party itself. So when we then learnt after all this that she didn't just pass away, but she'd been horribly murdered, then absolutely there's been outrage and a real concern about what it lies behind this, and understand the debate you've just been discussing there now. We should be cautious. We don't know the details of this. And as somebody myself who was under threat more than once, I rely very much on the police here. We've got some very good agencies, MI5, MI6, that are able to understand the threat picture. So you touched on Nigel Farage and him wanting sort of the private security. That's a separate debate where that money came from. We shouldn't mix the two. I'm uncomfortable with any MP or anybody going into politics suddenly receiving £5 million.
Sure, and Tobias, that you're right. That is one second. That is a separate debate. But I do want to get your thoughts on the security, specifically of Reform MPs, referring to a statement that Zia Youssef made on X. He said the state is providing no protection whatsoever. In fact, based on what I've seen in the last 48 hours, none of the government, the Speaker, nor the police care at all about the security of Reform MPs. What do you make of that comment?
I'm sorry, that is wrong, and it's politicising something which is very, very sensitive indeed. Every single member of the House of Commons is part of a fabric of security that's actually linked with their local police force as well as in London as well. So it's wrong for them to make these grand statements. If they have particular concerns, they should absolutely raise them. But when I was an MP for 20 years, they knew exactly where my house was. I had a direct line and so forth. And on the couple of occasions where my life, not my life was necessarily threatened, but there were massive demonstrations, actually Palestinian demonstrations outside my house, I was made aware of it via the police before the demonstrators had even arrived, because they'd picked up the social media intelligence. So I would push back on that a lot because of what happened after Joe Cox, what happened after these other threats to people's lives. The policing here in Britain, we can be very, very proud of. I appreciate, there are examples when the police get it wrong, but actually when it comes to MP security, they do a very good job. But you can never, of course, rule out what we call the lone wolf, the individual who is obsessed, that doesn't tell anybody, that then works on their own. But I think Reform need to be careful with the words that they choose to politicise this story.
Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Well, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, to the Middle East, where the US has insisted that the Strait of Hormuz is open. This is despite Iran claiming that the waterway is closed, only owing to the recent exchange of fire between the rivals. Iran is now once again hitting Gulf neighbours who had appeared to be off limits for weeks, while the US strikes against Iran are getting more intense. The US stated it had struck more than 140 Iranian targets, marking the third round of US attacks this week after President Trump declared the ceasefire over. So with the US and Iran issuing contradictory statements about the Strait of Hormuz, not for the first time, I would add, in this conflict, Gulf nations are coming under attack and a complete diplomatic breakdown from what I can see. The question must be asked, are the two countries once again heading for all-out war? With me now, CEO of Ahura AI and the Future of Humanity Foundation, friend of the show, Brian Talibi. Brian, great to chat to you again. My producer has made it easy for me. I'll repeat the question. Are we going to return to all-out war between Iran and the US in coming days and weeks?
Well, that really depends. First of all, thank you so much for having me on again. I enjoyed being on your show. It really depends on how the IRGC and the Islamic regime respond. Because when Arakchi and Ghalibaf were in negotiations with the United States, they made certain agreements around the Strait of Hormuz and allowing free access to the world. The agreement, the core of the agreement was that the United States would lift our blockade and they would lift theirs. Now, the response from the hardliners inside Iran was to say that they lost all of their leverage and they're being humiliated. And so before, I've spoken at length on your show about how nobody truly has control over the IRGC. There's 31 provincial commands that make their own decisions, absent a real supreme leader to give them new directives. And so what you're seeing here is the hardliners using the leverage and the power they have to attack ships that are transporting oil through the Strait of Hormuz, to cause trouble for global markets, and also attacking other countries. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is that Iran asked Oman to help negotiate a new peace deal, a new truce. Within 24 hours, one of the IRGC commands attacked that same country, Oman. What that shows is there isn't any true leadership inside Iran that can make that determination. And unfortunately, the United States and the West will have to respond in kind. And President Trump is showing his willingness to make Iran pay a price for the damage that they're causing in the Gulf.
Brian, my question would be, if we don't believe that the people from on the Iranian side who are negotiating this deal have the ability to be able to control the elements within that within the state that are currently shooting out missiles because of that decentralised nature of the regime now, what's the point in negotiating with them at all?
I think that's the exact conclusion that President Trump has come to. Look, there have been a lot of groups within the United States asking for peace. I think President Trump has demonstrated that he's willing to engage in a peace process in good faith, in spite of all of the times in the past that the Islamic regime has shown themselves to be willing to lie, look into the eyes of negotiators and lie directly. We did everything in our power to achieve peace, and it appears as though that cannot work. And so my suspicion is that now that the Iranian regime has decided that the easy way is not the right path, they're going to FAFO and find out what happens when they continuously lie to the United States and try to attack American interests, both in the Gulf and more globally. And remember, just over the past 2 days, we found out that there is a new attempt by the Islamic regime to assassinate President Trump. And interestingly enough, during the funeral of the previous supreme leader, they not only called for the death of President Trump and America, but also for Lindsey Graham, who very recently, unfortunately, has died. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family and his staff and his friends.
Yeah, of course, though, Trump has pressures on at home which the Iranian regime don't have to worry about. How do you feel the political pressures on Donald Trump, cost of living, a sense of fatigue around this conflict? How influential is that in the United States at the moment, and how will it influence the calculus that he has in front of him?
Well, I think President Trump has shown that his judgment has been spot on over and over again, so I'm not concerned about that. He's willing to make the difficult decisions in spite of what the easy path would be at any given point in time. Now, I do believe that if we take off the brakes and actually go for it, we can end the Islamic regime before the end of the summer. That would require a concerted effort. It would require the Persian people to rise up. It would require us to leverage some of the other militaries and militias that can support in this endeavor. Of course, the Kurds in the northwest and the Baluchis in the southeast. But if we apply enough military pressure, and of course, over the past 3 days, we've hit 300 targets in Bandar Abbas and around that region, I believe we can end this fairly quickly. You have to remember that the Islamic regime is basically bankrupt at this point. They have no real missile defense. They have no military left. At this point, they're sitting ducks. Now it's just a matter of making the decision to go all in.
Brian, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go to my panel. I'll start in DC. And Simon, I'll go to you first. We heard comments from Trump a day or two ago where he labelled the regime sick people, scum, can't be trusted, all of that sort of rhetoric. My view would be we've always known this. This isn't new. This regime is evil. They can't be trusted. We've known this since the fall of the Shah. So I'll reiterate, I'll re-ask the question that I asked to Brian, which is, if we've known all this all along, that effectively they, A, don't have control over a decentralised attack structure within their country, and B, they're not going to stick to their word anyway, what is the point of negotiations?
Well, I'm not as much of an expert on Iran as your previous guest, but I do believe that there is a pretty strong centralized control. They've been cementing it over 50 years. You negotiate with your enemies, right? You don't need to negotiate with your friends if you agree already, and deals can be made even sometimes with the worst people, from Muammar Gaddafi to Hitler and Stalin making a deal that held as long as it held. So
well, it didn't hold though. That's the point.
No, but it held long enough, right, for Hitler, and then he got what he wanted and he invaded, and obviously that was a bad bet. I'm just saying, you can't, you have to negotiate and you have to try to reach some kind of agreement. And what I would hope would happen now is that the Gulf states and the Europeans are going to realize that, that they have to help us to put the Iranians back in their box and secure the Straits of Hormuz for international shipping, which matters a lot more to them than it does to us because they're untrustworthy and they're lobbing rockets just almost randomly at this point.
Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think right now what you're seeing from President Trump is trying to give diplomacy a chance, but I think he also recognizes that there's a fine line here. And it's all the more reason why the United States has conducted well over 100 military strikes. The truth is, I think Iran's got this notion that they can just wait out President Trump here, that there's this quote-unquote economic pressure on the United States, and that's just not the truth. And the proof of that can be seen in the fact that the strait is open. On Wednesday, you saw over 20 ships cross through the strait. On Thursday, over 20 ships moving through the strait. On top of that, the price of oil per barrel is back down to where it was before this war began, at around $70 per barrel. So, the truth is, you're not going to outweigh President Trump on this. The truth is, I think he's got a plan here and absolutely giving diplomacy a chance, but if that doesn't work, moving forward with military strikes. And I do think the point made about the Arab nations, the neighboring nations here, taking on further action, that's a good point. The truth is this is a coalition at the end of the day that's really going to, I think, get this war to come to an end and have true peace and lasting peace in the Middle East. Really, for the first time in my lifetime, you're seeing those neighboring countries taking action here. And the reason why is they've been attacked by Iran, many of them. The reason why is they want peace and stability in the region. This is President Trump building on those Abraham Accords that he set in motion in his first term. It's not just the United States doing it. It's going to be these neighboring countries. We'll see what President Trump does next. But it's clear he wants to get this war to come to an end. If diplomacy fails, we'll go right back to military strikes. Iran is weak. The United States has them on their heels.
Jonathan, I want your thoughts, but specifically I want to start with your the assertion that the Iranians can't outlast Donald Trump.
I mean, I sort of sometimes feel like I'm existing in a different plane of reality from other people.
I think you do.
Yeah, but not in the way that you'd like it to be. The idea that somehow Donald Trump has a plan. What is the plan? How has it been executed? Clearly, there has been no plan. He doesn't know anything about what he's doing. The story changes every single day. A couple of weeks ago, J.D. Vance said, perhaps he should try being friends with the Iranians. Donald Trump said he likes them. Before that, he said time and time again, they're giving us a gift, they're giving us a present. I can do business with them. The bad guys are gone. We've replaced them with the good guys now. He has no idea what he's doing. He has no idea how to get out of this situation. The only reason we're talking about the Straits of Hormuz is that the war started. Before Donald Trump started this war, entirely of his own accord, by the way, you make it sound like it was somehow an act of God or something that was imposed upon him. He chose this because he was stupid enough to listen to Netanyahu, who's been trying to convince presidents for the last 40 years to do this. Trump was the only person stupid enough to agree. So he chose this. No one was talking about the Straits of Hormuz before because Iran has never closed them before. Iran has now discovered the absolute golden ticket, which is that it can close the Straits of Hormuz and therefore hold the world to an effective economic ransom. Donald Trump admitted that he had to sign a deal with the Iranians because the global economy was going to go into free fall otherwise. He admitted that in his own words. So the idea that it's Iran has now discovered it has a huge lever. The idea, and to go back to the previous guest, the idea that somehow Donald Trump is finally, after sort of 5 months nearly, finally now he's going to show the Iranians hell. It's just the most extraordinary kind of fantasy. Iran has a lever that is very, very cheap to maintain, and it can maintain it for as long as it wants. Its military is not going to be obliterated. The Americans said it's been obliterated. Time and time again, it has not been obliterated.
Matt, I want your response specifically to Jonathan's point that the Iran now has the golden ticket of effectively being able to control the Strait of Hormuz.
Happy to give my response as to this. No offense, John, I think you're completely wrong. First of all, the strait is open. The strait's open. It's not closed. Second, like I said earlier, you've seen the price of oil per barrel back down to where it was, roughly speaking, before this war began. You're seeing the United States, the stock market hitting all-time highs. You're seeing strong GDP growth. So for Iran to have this notion they're going to outweigh President Trump, which appears to be their strategy, well, it's a very failed strategy. And look, President Trump made the right course here, the right decision on launching this conflict. Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon, and he took the right course. This is not an easy task, but it's the right task. And I do think that the United States and President Trump are being smart in building great alliance in the region. Again, I go back to, it's not just going to be the United States alone putting this pressure on Iran. You're seeing neighboring countries do it as well. And we'll see what President Trump does next. He's trying to give diplomacy a chance. It's Iran that is not negotiating in good faith. And if that's going to be the case, then the United States will go right back to these military attacks. Iran does not have a sustained military right now. Their navy's at the bottom of the sea. They're launching a few drones here and there. They are extraordinarily weak. Their economy is extraordinarily weak. President Trump took the right course here. It's not an easy task. There's a reason why no other U.S. president took this on, because it's a tough task. But it's the right course, and I think President Trump's making the right decisions here.
I want to bring in Paul Cox. Paul, a two-part question, and it goes to Matt's argument that this was the right thing to do, that starting this conflict was the right thing to do. Do you agree, and has your answer changed over the course of this conflict?
My answer's never changed over the course of this. I do agree. If you're going to go for the snake, you might as well cut its head off. Unfortunately, the Middle East and Iran in particular is not a pool you can dip your toe into. You're either diving in and having a big old swim, or you better stay away. And I think Donald Trump is finding that. I don't know if he knew that beforehand. I think the Straits of Hormuz probably caught him a little bit by surprise. However, he did make a promise to the Iranian people, and I hope he keeps that promise. Iran, of course, is the biggest proxy and funder of terrorism around the world. We've seen it here in the UK. There are IRGC in the UK. I think Matt makes an excellent point with regards to having allies in the region. One thing that has changed slightly since the end of February, and it's not all been a success story for Donald Trump, let's be honest about this, but one thing that has changed slightly is that he has managed, I think, to get people on board. And it's not just Israel that's on board in that region now. It's a lot of other countries that surround Iran which have just about had enough and would like to see regime change too.
Jonathan, because of my smart aleck comment, I'll give you the final word.
I mean, not one word in the previous 5 minutes has been true. That's all I can say. Literally nothing. Of course there was no plan. Of course Donald Trump had no idea what he was doing. Of course he didn't know. He admitted it, Paul. You don't need to cover him because he admits it himself. He didn't know the Straits of Hormuz were going to be closed. He didn't know that there other nations were going to be attacked. And he has no idea how to get out of it. Iran can outlast him because Iran is not a democracy and it's not accountable to its people. Donald Trump is accountable to his people despite his best attempts to subvert democracy at every turn. So he's going to have to face the American people who didn't sign up to a war, in fact voted expressly against the idea of a war in Iran. Now they've got it, and they're seeing all the consequences of that. So if Donald Trump thinks that he can just go toe-to-toe with the Iranians for as long as it takes, he's going to find that the American people disagree.
OK, well, unfortunately, this is a conversation which we will be having still over the coming weeks and I dare say months ahead. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. That was the Argentinian players invoking the Falklands in a chant in their dressing room. The country's foreign minister has renewed the claim to the islands in what will undoubtedly give the upcoming clash on the pitch even more of an edge. And that's not even considering the fact that there is a final spot up for grabs. This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This week brings more sunshine, remaining very warm, if not locally hot in some places, and still often rather windy across the south. Some spots of low cloud through the early hours of this morning. This will bring some rain across parts of East Anglia, central England, perhaps parts of Lincolnshire as well, eventually clearing through the course of the morning, and you can see plenty of clear skies across the UK for the afternoon. Away from the northeast of Scotland, some low cloud lingering here. Another very warm day on the cards, particularly across the south. We could still reach around 30 degrees Celsius here, but in a brisk easterly breeze, still feeling that little bit cooler along some eastern coasts. Now, later this evening, we could start to see a little bit of a change. Some more cloud pushing up across the south, eventually some showers, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. Otherwise, elsewhere across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, plenty of late evening sunshine to finish off the day. Clear skies, very similar across Scotland, though away from the northeast, where there'll be some low cloud around coastal areas. This eventually through the course of the night will continue to drag its way back westwards across Scotland. And that's a very similar picture elsewhere across England, some moisture still feeding in from an easterly breeze off the North Sea, and this will progress its way westwards overnight. Any showers across the south soon clearing by the early hours of the morning, and a little fresher for some, but still across the south, another warm night, temperatures not dropping past 16 to 17 degrees. Now on Tuesday, it's a very similar picture to what we've had the last few days. There will be some cloud around to start. It'll eventually clear through the morning, and then there'll be wall-to-wall blue skies across many areas. Still some lingering low cloud across the northeast of Scotland, perhaps lingering around some coastal areas, and a build of higher cloud across the south later, creating more hazy spells of sunshine. Otherwise, another hot day in the south, but still a little less warm across the east.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. As England gear up for their semi-final against Argentina, we had a timely reminder today that however fiery the rivalry is on the pitch, it can reach unprecedented levels off it. In a news statement, Argentina's foreign minister, in peculiar timing, called Falkland Islanders an artificially implanted population. This was part of a lengthy essay that demanded Britain enter talks to hand over the territory. Pablo Queno argued that the 2013 referendum, in which the islanders chose overwhelmingly to remain British, was illegitimate. He added that the 1982 war and the 2013 vote had failed to resolve the dispute over the archipelago, and said that sovereignty over the islands should not be decided by a population artificially implanted by the occupying power. With me now is the reporter for Reason Magazine, friend of the show, Reem Ibrahim. Reem, great to see you. What do you make of the Argentine Foreign Minister's comments?
Pleasure. Thank you.
Great to see you, Will. And look, I think it's absolutely abhorrent. The people of the Falkland Islands have made their voice abundantly clear. They are British. They want to remain British. And I do really think this is part of a wider problem here. We saw what's happened with the Chagos Islands. We saw the people who are from the Chagos Islands that we unlawfully evicted from their home. They have overwhelmingly decided that they want to remain British. They want their homeland to remain British. And yet the British government, it's often the Foreign Office that are making these mistakes. They want to effectively disregard what those people want, and they take away their sovereignty. They take away their right to self-determination. Now, we have to make sure we don't make that same mistake with the Falkland Islands. Something I find really interesting, and I only found out about this when I went to go and visit the Falkland Islands last year in February, is that before the Falklands War, the Foreign Office were actually considering doing the exact same thing that we did with the Chagos Islands. They were actually considering handing the Falkland Islands over to Argentina, a country that has never had a historic claim to the islands. And I must say, when I was there, you can see a picture there with me with the penguins. They actually have the highest population of Gentoo penguins in the world, which was awesome. But also the people. When you're in the Falkland Islands, you feel just like you are in a small English town. It is so British, it almost could not be more British. And I do almost think that I felt a renewed sort of sense of pride for what it means to have that British identity. So, you know, no matter what Argentina want to say, no matter what the foreign minister wants to say, the Falkland Islands are British and they will remain British so long as that we are willing to defend them.
Yeah, what was that old line that was used during the Falklands conflict? The Falkland Islanders are more British than the British, I think was how it was phrased. You mentioned the Labor government. I note that Keir Starmer has said that the Falkland Islands will always remain British. At the same time, they've been very happy to hand over British sovereign territory when it comes to the Chagos Islands. Do you have concerns that a Burnham government, Labor government, may entertain the possibility of at least opening a conversation with Argentina on this topic?
Absolutely. I think I have particular concern about what this looks like with every party in politics. Probably because a lot of politicians do not fully understand the role that the overseas territories play and really how special that relationship is. I mean, a lot of members of parliament that I used to speak to when I was back in London didn't even know what the British overseas territories were. And yet our relationship with them is so special. The Falkland Islands, Montserrat, Gibraltar, all of these wonderful places have chosen to remain part of the British family. They have chosen, when they had the opportunity to gain independence, when we had the opportunity as the British Empire fell, when we gave all of those territories and different areas the right and the responsibility to self-govern, they decided to stay British. They made that choice. This is a voluntary relationship. And I think that we have to make sure we do right by those people. The Falkland Islands people are some of the most incredibly British people I've ever met, but also extraordinarily kind. It's really interesting. When I was there, I became friends with primary school teachers. I actually went to one of their homes and met their children. You know, the people are just so incredibly kind and welcoming, but also crucially, they really do know what it means to defend their homeland, because they have had so many governments, so many people, so many politicians that have never even stepped foot in the Falkland Islands try and tell them who can govern them. And I think that, you know, as a libertarian, I often joke that the Falkland Islands government is probably the most legitimate government in the world, because 99% of Falkland Islanders voted to remain a part of the British family. And I think that that is so special. We have to make sure that we fight for that self-determination. We fight for that sovereignty, because that's what it means to be British.
Reem, on that, I'll offer you a hypothetical. Let's say that history repeats and a group of crazy Argentinians invade the Falklands once again. Do you think that this government would take the same action that Thatcher took and fight for them?
I don't think they'd be able to afford to. I mean, looking at the state of our defence, looking at the state of our military, we can barely even afford to defend mainland United Kingdom, let alone the Falkland Islands. It's extraordinarily expensive to get down there. It's very expensive to bring military personnel there. Actually, a lot of the military in the United Kingdom, those members of the British military actually do end up often training down in the Falkland Islands because it's really particularly beneficial for them to do so. I do not have the confidence in this government to defend that self-determination because they didn't do it with the Chagossians. They haven't been able to do it with other British overseas territories. The question is, will this government really promise to defend that self-determination, that right to individual liberty, that right to self-govern? Or will they say, Falkland Islands are not our problem? And I think that that's really the question here. But also, crucially, it is coming home this Wednesday. England are going to beat Argentina and really show who the best country is.
Here, Reem, always a pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you.
Paul, I'll ask you the same question. Let's play out this hypothetical. Let's say again, group of crazy, half-drunk Argentinians arrive on the Falkland Islands, with a pretty flimsy military, but nonetheless something enough to take control of those islands. Do you think Keir Starmer, or in a month's time, let's say Andy Burnham, would spring into action and put the armed forces into action to defend those islands?
I think they would, but I'd be worried that they wouldn't. I think the consensus is that they should, because 99.8% of the Falkland Islanders did vote to remain part of Britain. And you just assume that that's because there's a 100% British there. It's not true. It's about 70% of the island's British. A further 10 or 15% is St Helena. 5 to 10% of them are Chilean, and the rest are other, so multicultural from all around the world. So there is anywhere between 20 and 30% that are non-British people based on the Falkland Islands, yet almost by, with the minus of 0.2%, they're nearly all voted to remain part of Britain rather than be part of any other country, and in this case it would be Argentina. So on that basis alone, if Burnham or Starmer didn't, they would have no mandate not to.
Jonathan, did you agree with the Argentine Foreign Minister when he said that the population was artificially implanted?
No, of course not. It's complete nonsense. There was no indigenous Argentine population in the Falklands before the British came. There was no population of any kind. There's absolutely, it's an arbitrary claim that Argentina has, and I have never been able to understand it because Argentina is itself, the product of colonialism. And
that often gets missed, doesn't it?
And you look at the population of Argentina; it's one of the least multicultural countries in South America, actually, because the indigenous population is almost entirely wiped out. The Argentines themselves are almost all descended from people from Spain, and yes, Paul, some people also from other countries in Europe as well. So look, I think Argentina's a fantastic country in lots of ways, and I think it's very, very stupid to make this kind of football match a rerun of the Falklands War. I loathe that kind of thing. The Argentines are very, very decent people. They were led by an awful government at the time, by an awful junta at the time of the invasion, and they've said time and time again that the solution that they want is diplomatic, and they will not ever have military engagement again. Well, and it has to be said that Britain's had a military presence in the Falklands since the war, and it is a very, very well-defended sort of archipelago.
Simon, we heard about, Jonathan just mentioned the word diplomacy. You yourself are a former diplomat. What have you made of these comments from the Argentinian government?
Yeah, I'm strangely in agreement with Jonathan here. Every country, it's a palimpsest. It's got layers of settlement over many years. I think the Argentines base their claim on the papal treaty of 1493, where the Pope said, we're going to divide the world in half, and the Portuguese get half, and the Spanish get the other half. And I think Brazil, that's the reason they speak Portuguese, because they couldn't read the map right, and they ended up with the Portuguese. So, yeah, look, the Argentine claim is just simply not a valid one in law or in international relations, and 99% of the islanders want to remain British. So I'm hoping he was speaking just to win votes, and that they're not going to seriously have another go at it, because as Jonathan says, it's a lot better defended than it was back in 1982.
Matt, the US may be in a tricky position if this was to ever come to pass. I don't think it will, but if it ever was to come to pass and there was some sort of conflict over the Falklands, I think the special relationship still endures between the United Kingdom and the United States. At the same time, Trump has a very strong relationship with Javier Milei. I despise his opinion on the Falkland Islands, but at the same time, I admire some of his libertarian instincts. Where would the US side if this was to come to pass?
Yeah, it's up to President Trump to decide what he does there. And I do think that Secretary Rubio just recently weighed in on this very topic and essentially said the United States is standing by its policy position here, being neutral. That's long been, frankly, the standing policy of the U.S. government. And as relates to Argentina, though, seeing the song they sang at the World Cup, I'm a big believer that we should just keep politics, policy, international conflict out of the World Cup. The World Cup's all about soccer, as you all call it, football. That's the way it should be. And as for President Trump, what he does with this situation, obviously it'll be up to him to decide what he does. But there's no question that despite some of the differences the U.S. and the U.K. has, there's still a very special bond and relationship between the U.S. and the U.K.
Well, it would certainly make a win over the Argentinians all the sweeter for the English team. Let's move on to...
I think it would.
You don't think it would?
No, I really hate this. In the same way that, I grew up in England where we had 2 World Wars and 1 World Cup. It was stupid then, it's stupid now. Football is football, I agree with that. Football is football, war is war. Please, can we keep the two separate?
Paul, I'll give you a right of reply there.
Well, I mean, I want to disagree with Jonathan, just because I think it'd be good for the show. But he's right. I mean, sport is sport and war is war. But, there's bragging rights here, and I want the bragging rights to be English.
Yeah, obviously I want England to win, but not because of the Falklands, because I'm English.
Well, that game is coming up on Wednesday. Ben Leo will be there. We'll be covering it the build-up in the coming days on GBNews. Inside story out of The Telegraph in tomorrow's paper, I should say now today's paper. The Telegraph is reporting that Tory centrists have defied Kemi Badenoch over her red lines on net zero and the European Convention on Human Rights. Mrs Badenoch has rejected some former Conservative MPs as candidates at the next election for refusing to align with her rejection of the 2050 net zero target and her pledge to leave the ECHR. Centrist Tories insist that those who supported the 2050 target and Britain's ongoing membership of the controversial treaty should be able to stand in the future. In an article for The Telegraph, Mrs Badenoch wrote that she was building a party for the future, not a retirement home for failed politicians. Paul, this, I guess, confirms some of the suspicions that I have about the Conservative Party. I think, for the record, Badenoch is doing an almost impossible job, about as well as she possibly could. It's a very, very hard job whenever she says something, it is a very easy response to say, well, either you guys caused the problem or you guys failed to fix the problem. But the other problem that she has, and political problem, is that about a third of the Parliamentary Conservative Party are, I would still say, proper Conservatives, give or take. About a third could go either way and are basically just there because they want to be an MP. And about a third probably should be in the Lib Dems and are that sort of wet Tory type of politician that I would argue got the party into the mess that it is now in. What do you make of this rejection of her position?
Well, they're turkeys voting for Christmas in terms of the rejection. These are still Tories. Kemi Badenoch has essentially come out and apologised for the last 14 years and says she's going to do things differently. Those are disagreeing with Kemi Badenoch now have no grounds on which to have this battle whatsoever, because it's all been proven. It's the Tory wets that have caused the problem. It's the Tory wets that need to swallow their pride or join the Lib Dems. And it's the Tory wets that will continue to sink the Tories should they continue with this ridiculous crusade that they've got to make the Conservatives non-conservative. So Kemi Badenoch's absolutely right. I really admire Kemi Badenoch and the things that she's been doing, particularly in recent times with regards to PMQs. I think she's on to a bit of a losing battle because I just don't think she's going to change their mind. I think these people are so stuck in the mud that they've created that they're never going to understand what she's talking about anyway. They really don't comprehend that it's them that are the problem and them that need to change.
I guess following on from the insinuation perhaps there from Paul, Jonathan, do you think the Conservative Party is finished?
You never write off a major political party in this country. Parties come back. People used to write off Labour as well in 2019. The Labour came back as well.
Some parties don't, though, really. There are once-in-a-century realignments.
OK, I don't think this is one of those times. I think reform will die before the Conservative Party does. Look, what you have at the moment is, I think, a very, very foolish miscalculation. That there's an idea that you have to be a purist in politics and that you believe what you believe, and anyone who wants to be in my gang has to believe what I believe. That is not how you win over people or indeed parties, and certainly not the public. The Conservative Party has been an effective political tool by being a broad church, by being a coalition, just as the Labour Party is. And one of the things that Starmer got very, very wrong was purging the left from the party. Tony Blair didn't even purge the left. He accommodated the left because he knew that the left didn't have power, by the way. Jeremy Corbyn didn't try to purge the right of the party, and people. And one of the problems that Corbyn had was he was a purist as well. Even though he didn't purge them, he wanted people, in his team, particularly as his time went on, who kind of believed what he believed. And what you have now is someone like Kemi Badenoch basically saying the party belongs to me.
Can I just
and
ask
if you want
that
to
in the minute we have
be a
left?
candidate, you have to believe in these policies that weren't even Conservative policies until a year ago.
To follow up on that, I understand the broad church argument in a 2 to 2.5 party system where you do need to encourage both the Conservative and Liberal strands to come together. We're now in a 5 to 6 party system where people can pick a right-wing party, a centre-right party, a centre-left party.
Representation to make up for that. So if you had a proportional representation system, fine, because then people can go this party or they can go to this party that's just a little bit further right or a little bit further left. But that's not how it works in this country, because people, you'll still end up by and large with occasionally you'll have a hung parliament, but by and large you'll have parties winning a majority, a small majority or a big majority. That tends to be how elections work because of first past the post. And so the mistake is that you mistake the country for your base. And Kemi Badenoch's base might like what she says about net zero and the ECHR, both of which were not Conservative policies until very, very recently. But the public at large, you win elections by accommodating more than that. So if you're telling those people, F off to the Lib Dems or F off to Reform, although she's not saying that, of course, then you can go to the Lib Dems. That's what the Labour Party said, well, go and join the Tories then. And people did go and vote. They did vote for the Tories. And people are going to vote for the Lib Dems. And it will be Badenoch's fault.
Well, time will tell. More coming up in the next hour, ladies and gentlemen, including this.
This Prime Minister is in denial of the rising despair across the country over his failure to stop the boats and related criminality.
What do? They try to whip up fear and division.
A mega dinghy carrying 128 migrants has crossed the channel in what is a new record for a number of arrivals on a single small boat. We're going to cover that on The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This week brings more sunshine, remaining very warm, if not locally hot in some places, and still often rather windy across the south. Some spots of low cloud through the early hours of this morning. This will bring some rain across parts of East Anglia, central England, perhaps parts of Lincolnshire as well, eventually clearing through the course of the morning, and you can see plenty of clear skies across the UK for the afternoon. Away from the northeast of Scotland, some low cloud lingering here. Another very warm day on the cards, particularly across the south. We could still reach around 30 degrees Celsius here, but in a brisk easterly breeze, still feeling that little bit cooler along some eastern coasts. Now, later this evening, we could start to see a little bit of a change. Some more cloud pushing up across the south, eventually some showers, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. Otherwise, elsewhere across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, plenty of late evening sunshine to finish off the day. Clear skies, very similar across Scotland, though away from the northeast, where there'll be some low cloud around coastal areas. This eventually through the course of the night will continue to drag its way back westwards across Scotland. And that's a very similar picture elsewhere across England. Some moisture still feeding in from an easterly breeze off the North Sea, and this will progress its way westwards overnight. Any showers across the south soon clearing by the early hours of the morning, and a little fresher for some, but still across the south another warm night, temperatures not dropping past 16 to 17 degrees. Now on Tuesday, it's a very similar picture to what we've had the last few days. There will be some cloud around to start. It'll eventually clear through the morning, and then there'll be wall-to-wall blue skies across many areas. Still some lingering low cloud across the northeast of Scotland, perhaps lingering around some coastal areas, and a build of higher cloud across the south later, creating more hazy spells of sunshine. Otherwise, another hot day in the south, but still a little less warm across the east.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again
to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
At this point, there is still no information to suggest that this is a terrorism-related incident. There is nothing to suggest that it was politically motivated.
Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering former MP Anne Widdecombe. GB News was on the ground today in Devon to see the touching floral tributes to a political titan. Also, one of the great victories. It was gutsy, it was nerve-jangling, but they got there. England's win over Norway yesterday has excited the nation. They've booked their place in the World Cup semi-finals against Argentina. Also, That was the Argentina players invoking the Falklands in a chant in their dressing room. The country's foreign minister has renewed the claim to the islands in what will give the upcoming clash on the pitch even more of an edge. Also,
commercial shipping can't be terrorized in the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously the memorandum of understanding between the parties was always performance-based.
that was an interview where US Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker warned of overwhelming force. Well, with contradictory statements issued by the US and Iran, becoming a pattern, I might say, over the Strait of Hormuz, an intensifying exchange of fire between the two countries, and an increasing feeling of mistrust. Are the rivals risking a return to all-out war? And
a friend of mine for a long time. We don't always agree, but that's okay too. But he's a great guy, a great politician actually, and a terrific person who loves the estate. Senator Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you.
A hugely significant figure in American politics. Tributes have been pouring in as Washington responds to the death of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina at the age of 71. What does his trajectory from never-Trumper to one of the president's most staunch allies say about politics in America in 2026? We'll discuss all that and more. I'm Will Kingston. This is The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live for a third and final hour, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for staying with me, and thank you very much to my panel for enduring me for another hour. We've got Jonathan Liss and Paul Cox in London, and in Washington DC, former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio, Matt Terrell, and Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Simon Hankinson. Thank you, gents. Let's go to the sad, tragic news of the death of Anne Widdecombe. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering former MP Anne Widdecombe. She was found dead at her home in Devon on Thursday. Police believe she was killed almost 24 hours earlier, around midday. With me now is former Liberal Democrat councillor, friend of the show, Matthew Holbert. Matthew, good to see you again. I'm aware that you knew Anne personally. What are your reflections of her as a politician and as a person?
So I had a couple of interactions with her. I interviewed her, 20 years ago now, when I was a local radio reporter here in the Midlands, and she was coming to an event at Coventry Cathedral, an anti-abortion event at Coventry Cathedral, and I interviewed her about that. And then fast forward 20 years, and on this wonderful channel, you guys gave me the opportunity to debate her on the proposal of a Labour MP about a summer of sex, if you remember, a few weeks ago, in regards to sex education, etc. And all I can say is that she was very forthright on both occasions. But I've been really reflecting over the past couple of days that I think what people really liked about Anne Widdecombe, and what I even respect, despite the fact that I disagreed with her on almost everything, was that she was that most special of things for a politician. She was authentic. She said what she meant, and she meant what she said. And you don't often get that with politicians, do you? Politicians like to duck and dive and do all of that stuff to get through the day or get through a media interview. Anne Widdecombe wasn't like that. She would tell you absolutely what she thought. Now, I think that cost her political career. I think one of the reasons why she was never, for example, in John Major's cabinet, was because she was seen as a bit of a live wire, and someone that would say what she thought, even if it was perhaps not necessarily the official line. And so I think it cost her politically, but I think the reason why many people respected her, even if they disagreed with her, was for that reason.
Of course, Anne Widdecombe was not a sitting MP. She was a spokesperson for reform at the same time, though. We have been discussing over the course of the night the safety of politicians in this country. Do you think politicians are safe in the United Kingdom?
Look, I mean, I think they mainly are, but sadly there are people, especially online, who, they get a view about a political figure, having never met them, knowing really nothing about them bar their public statements. And sometimes, people, sadly, tragically, can be a bit unhinged sometimes. And I mean, I must admit, as I've said before on this channel, always love coming on, really enjoy debating. But each time you guys put out a clip of me having done so, some of the comments, not all, but some of the comments are vile. I mean, they're just absolutely vile. And sadly, that's the social media world that we live in. Funny enough, though, I was watching a clip of Anne Widdecombe earlier on, I think at the Oxford Union, where she said that, no one has a right not to take offence. And so what I do is I just shrug my shoulders and say, very sad that, people react to someone giving their view in that way. But it's what we have to put up with, I guess, for a free society.
Well, of course, I've seen several disgusting comments, both on X and on Blue Sky, after her death. Do you think the right response to that is to place increased restrictions on social media companies?
I don't know. I mean, I think, you see, as a Liberal, part of me says that, we shouldn't have further restrictions. But if we're not to have those restrictions, Will, then these social media companies need to be responsible. And I'm afraid they're not always, I think there's I'm not a free speech absolutist. I believe we all have to live within the law and we pretty much have to live within the social mores of the time as well. So I'm not a laissez-faire, say what you want and suffer the consequences person. So actually, I think social media companies do have a responsibility. And I mean, I'm not really in favour of the social media ban for under 16s, but you can perhaps understand why people think that is an answer when you see some of the dreadful stuff that's being pumped out to kids.
Matthew, always a pleasure to chat to you. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Cheers.
Once again, strength and love to the friends and family of Anne Widdecombe. Let's go to my panel in London. Jonathan, I'll start with you on an angle which we haven't covered so far tonight. It was notable in the communications from Devon and Cornwall Police that they, when they arrested a 26-year-old man yesterday, who has now been disregarded as part of the investigation, and more recently a 28-year-old man, they included in their comments that they were a 26-year-old white British national and a 28-year-old white British national, respectively. Do you think it was appropriate and the right thing to do to include the ethnicity of the people who had been arrested in those communications?
I think it's a real problem that this is now the standard response by the police. I think that what we have to ask ourselves why we're doing that. If it had been a black person or a Muslim person that had been suspected of killing Anne Widdecombe, what do we think the public discourse would now be? Would it be the same as it has been? I think not.
Well, do you think the police would have said it at the same time?
I think that the police now have a policy, which is that they do reveal the ethnicity. And if they hadn't revealed the ethnicity, people would have asked, why haven't you released the ethnicity? And of course, obviously we know this is not what happened, but certain figures would have said, would have started a conversation about it.
If they're going to do it, they need to be
exactly. So what we saw after obviously Southport was a lot of misinformation about the ethnicity of that perpetrator, and obviously you had similar things happen in other horrific attacks recently where the ethnicity of the person has been of great public interest, and obviously we've had things events where people have gone on actual riots after a non-white person has been guilty of committing a terrible crime. I don't like what it says because about sort of ethnicity in this country, because when a white British person does a horrible thing, murder someone, allegedly, then we don't impugn all white people. We don't say it's a problem with whiteness or Britishness or indeed maleness. But if it's a Muslim person, I don't think the same conversations would be being had about mental health or whatever it is that we were seeing on the front page.
Of course, we need to distinguish between ethnicity and religion. White is an ethnicity, or white Anglo, whatever calls an ethnicity. Islam is a religion.
The point I'm getting at is that Muslim people are not dictated. What Muslim people do is not dictated solely by their religion. They're also rounded human beings. There are some people who are good. There's good Muslim people, bad Muslim people, just like there are good Christian people, bad Christian people, good any people. Sure. And the problem that we have in this country is that when it's a Muslim person who's done something, we attribute that act to their being Muslim, rather than the fact that they are human beings You might have a range of problems or pathologies or sort of histories of terrible things have happened to them or mental illness or whatever, just as we do when it's a white person does this. And I find it problematic that we say it's a white person. That's, in a way, we're breathing a sigh of relief. Thank goodness there aren't going to be any riots now, or that Muslim people aren't going to be attacked in the street as a revenge for what happened to Anne Widdecombe or anything like that. But that's a problem, because what if it had been a Muslim person who was acting just in the same way as a white person did in this particular instance?
So, on balance, and I hear your concerns about it, and I hear what you think it says about society, but on balance, do you still think it is the right thing for police to do?
Obviously, in an ideal world, no, of course not. Given what we have seen with riots, etc., then yes. But on the other hand, if it had been, a Muslim person being suspected of committing this crime for no political motive, by the way, and then that would be a problem. But even if it was a political motive, that still wouldn't be an excuse to kind of attack Muslim people because of the actions of one Muslim person.
Paul, your thoughts?
Well, the speed of sound used to be the fastest measurement of speed. Now the fastest measurement of speed is how quickly a police constabulary can identify that it was a white person who committed a crime. It's just like that when it's a white person. And I found that very telling this week, which is kind of echoing what Jonathan
allegedly
has been saying. Yes, allegedly committed a crime. We still don't know, and there's been 2 people arrested so far, so we don't know anything. I think the point is that when it's not a white person, people are very slow to tell us what it is, which creates the void, the black hole in which people fill, often with negativity, because they just feel like they're being lied to. It goes back to a couple of things I've said across the stories. The British public aren't fed up because they are racist. They're fed up because they're continually lied to about certain people doing certain things. And I think it's just testament to the fact that that is true in how quickly they've come out to say it's a white person. Now, what Jonathan says is true. Unfortunately, when we don't know and then later find out, it really ignites an anger which I don't think is healthy. It's really unhealthy, if anything. But it does feel like we are being protected from the truth by the police more often than not.
Well, if the police, if this had been an Asian man, and we don't of any kind of religion, we don't, because the police wouldn't tell us what religion it is. We don't know if this person was Christian or anything else. But if it was an Asian man, you know perfectly well the conversation would be very, very different, very, very charged in a way that it hasn't been about in this particular case. Even if the police had said it at the time, that this is an Asian male who's been arrested, the conversation would be very, very different. And we know that certain political figures will be talking about it in a different way.
It's because people avoid to mention the 2 words, pro capita. So we do know that some crimes are disproportionately committed by people of certain beliefs and ethnicities. But we won't have the discussion which creates an environment in which people feel they're being lied to. It's not true of white people. There are 83% white people in the UK. But
you know it from listening to some people on this channel.
Well, but per capita, they don't proportionally commit certain crimes in the same way as perhaps an Islamist extremist might do. And the fact that we're never having open conversations, honest conversations about this, obviously we are here, but in more general terms, it creates this environment where people think they're constantly being lied to.
I think we have a problem in this country that that we breathe a sigh of relief, or many of us do, when it's revealed that it's a white person who's committed the crime, because if not, there'd be a risk of a riot.
We also don't believe the police when they say this is not politically motivated.
But Paul, look, you and I are not police officers. Of course, we can draw.
You dress up as one.
Of course, we can draw our own conclusions about someone allegedly driving hundreds of miles across country to target someone or to kill someone allegedly, etc. And that doesn't seem like someone's just stumbled upon. But again, I don't want to speculate because first of all, the police have asked us not to, and second of all, we don't know all the details of this case and what that person might have been allegedly thinking of at the time. So we have to take the police obviously, the police don't make it easier for us to take them at face value or take them at their word, given all the things that the police got wrong over the years. But that is what they're saying at the moment. There is no evidence. So presumably if there was evidence, they wouldn't say that. They just wouldn't say anything. So, there are all kinds of conversations that we will be able to have those conversations in due course. But the fact remains that it's a problem that we think there might be riots based on the ethnicity of a perpetrator.
Paul, I agree with Jonathan entirely that the police have not made it easy for us to trust them. There has been a long-standing tradition of policing by consent in this country, and I think prominent recent scandals in policing, with the Henry Novak footage being a real turning point moment in the minds of many people in this country. That's something I've reflected on when I've been reading the communications from Devon and Cornwall Police. My honest, instinctive response has been, I find it very hard to trust you guys.
Yeah, of course. We've been lied to by them. It's a matter of fact when I say that. Welsh choir boy, lone wolf. Lots of lone wolves seem to have the same ideology, which is outrageous. We know that there is an ideology that hates the West, hates Christianity, hates white people, hates British people, hates the country that they've chosen to live in. Yet we won't have the discussion, and the police protect them for the purposes of community cohesion.
You know perfectly well. There are lots of quote-unquote lone wolves everywhere. Just the other day, was it like a white guy was jailed for planning to shoot up his local Tesco's? But that's not a crisis for whiteness or Christianity, because it was a white guy, a white neo-Nazi who did it.
Because he was caught, convicted, and sent to prison.
Right.
When it comes to
prison as well.
Well, look, I don't want to invoke this because we haven't got a lot of time. But the Islamic rape gangs are testament to the fact of what I'm saying. They have, but the girls have been denied justice because they've been called racist. The parents, the brothers, the uncles that have confronted them have been convicted of crimes because they've tried to stick up for the disenfranchised white girls. The reason that people get so upset is not because the white people get sent to prison, it's because the non-whites are given special treatment.
That is just not borne out by the evidence. They're given special treatment. They're not given special treatment.
50 years of rape gangs.
This is a conversation which we have had. We will continue to have it, sadly, in the weeks and months ahead. But we do need to move on. I should add that I'm sure, or quite sure, that the police forces of this country would dispute or would disagree that they have lied to the people of the United Kingdom. The Telegraph, in other news, indeed, a very different tone. On the topic of 007, James Bond, the Telegraph are reporting that James Bond must remain white and male. This is from a casting expert for the franchise. Debbie McWilliams, who cast the previous 14 Bond films, said Ian Fleming wrote a character, and that's the way the character should stay. It follows demands for 007 to be reinvented as a woman or played by a black actor. Speaking to Variety at the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival, Ms. McWilliams said Ian Fleming wrote a character, and that's the character that stays. That's what I think. Miss McWilliams stepped down from her casting duties when MGM and the Bond franchise were taken over by Amazon in 2025. Let's get some thoughts from my panel. We've heard a lot from the gents in London. Let's go to the US first. Simon, should James Bond stay white and male?
Yes. I mean, for God's sake, we've just been talking endlessly about the Odyssey here, and why they're casting people who, don't make any sense sort of historically or culturally. James Bond was a character written by Ian Fleming. He'd be long dead now if he were a real person. He'd be like 120 years old. But he is clearly a British indigenous person. I can't remember if he's Scottish or English. And so are all the other characters in the James Bond books, if you read them. Now, obviously, we can play with that a bit today to take into account the demographic realities of Great Britain, but to cast him as a trans woman of color or whatever would just be stupid. Let's start over again. Let's invent a new spy who is a black person or a woman or whatever you want. Write a new book, but why flog this dead horse?
Simon, you've inadvertently raised an interesting point, and that is that the character is famously English, but the first actor to play him was famously Scottish. What's the difference?
Well, the British Isles contain 4 large indigenous groups, and I think I saw one of the movies where he was supposedly had Scottish roots, or Skyfall, or whatever. He had a big estate up in Scotland. I mean, that's a minor. George Lazenby played him. He was an Australian. Roger Moore was English. Many people have played him, but he's never been played by a woman, and he's never been played by a non-indigenous Brit, because that's the character. And like she said, it'd be like if you had Paddington Bear and you made him a cat. It wouldn't be Paddington Bear. It'd be a different book.
I have to concede that George Lazenby was easily the weakest of all of the Bond actors. It was not an impressive performance. Matt, I'll go to you. Simon is right in saying that this conversation has blown up regarding the Odyssey. He was referring to, I believe, the character of Helen of Troy, who is played by a black actress. Her name escapes me. I apologise. What do you think that? That's right. That's right. Do you agree with that on principle?
I agree 100%. Look, I've seen every single James Bond movie multiple times. And look, the bottom line here is there's a specific character that plays James Bond. That has been historically the pattern of every single movie put out in the Bond series. So, look, let's just be frank and honest. I think people in the UK, people in the United States, people around the world have had enough with this DEI notion that we have to change historical things just to push a DEI agenda. Look, people are all for diversity. There's a place for that. It's important to have diversity, but it's also important to have the right people playing the right roles. And historically, if you look at James Bond, there's a specific individual that plays this role. And so I don't think you should just go and change it to change it. And so I agree with many of the points Simon made.
Jonathan, you'd surely be advocating for the first trans James Bond?
Look, if they were to cast, for example, Idris Elba as James Bond, I think that he would be magnificent in the role. I don't think people would really care that much that he's black. He's British. I think it's more important to be British than anything else, to be honest. And no, I don't think that James Bond should be a woman. I think that James Bond is James Bond. That's a man. And if you want to have, there are many films about women spies and women agents, and that's great. And I don't think that should be James Bond. But I don't care that much about his ethnicity, I'm sorry.
A man who reminds me a great deal of James Bond, Paul Cox, what do you make of it?
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. By the way, I love that you asked Simon this English-Scottish question. I was thinking, I'm glad I didn't have to answer that. And it's the first time I've ever really seen Simon hesitate on sharing an opinion. You think I've got one, but I don't know if I should.
What about you, mate?
It's already been well and truly covered here. The character's been written. It is what it is, and it should remain as it is. Simon pointed out something I've always advocated. If you think you want something different, then write it yourself. Make it even better if you can. But I don't think you will. And it's right that it remains authentic and has its integrity. Idris Elba himself has said that James Bond shouldn't be black and it shouldn't be him.
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. Okay, well, we will wait and see where that casting decision goes. I think actually that that guy from the Frankenstein movie, Jacob Elordi, is one of the favourites as well. So there may well be another Aussie James Bond. For the record, I think that's the wrong thing to do. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
And a friend of mine for a long time. We don't always agree, but that's okay too. But he's a great guy, a great politician actually, and a terrific person who loves the estate, Senator Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you.
Tributes have been pouring in as Washington responds to the death of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina at the young age of 71. What does his trajectory from never Trumper to one of the president's most staunch allies say about politics in America in 2026? We'll answer that question on The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office.
This week brings more sunshine, remaining very warm, if not locally hot in some places, and still often rather windy across the south. Some spots of low cloud through the early hours of this morning. This will bring some rain across parts of East Anglia, central England, perhaps parts of Lincolnshire as well, eventually clearing through the course of the morning, and you can see plenty of clear skies across the UK for the afternoon. Away from the northeast of Scotland, some low cloud lingering here. Another very warm day on the cards, particularly across the south. We could still reach around 30 degrees Celsius here, but in a brisk easterly breeze, still feeling that little bit cooler along some eastern coasts. Now, later this evening, we could start to see a little bit of a change. Some more cloud pushing up across the south, eventually some showers, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. Otherwise, elsewhere across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, plenty of late evening sunshine to finish off the day. Clear skies, very similar across Scotland, though away from the northeast, where there'll be some low cloud around coastal areas. This eventually through the course of the night will continue to drag its way back westwards across Scotland. And that's a very similar picture elsewhere across England. Some moisture still feeding in from an easterly breeze off the North Sea, and this will progress its way westwards overnight. Any showers across the south soon clearing by the early hours of the morning, and a little fresher for some, but still across the south another warm night, temperatures not dropping past 16 to 17 degrees. Now on Tuesday, it's a very similar picture to what we've had the last few days. There will be some cloud around to start. It'll eventually clear through the morning, and then there'll be wall-to-wall blue skies across many areas. Still some lingering low cloud across the northeast of Scotland, perhaps lingering around some coastal areas, and a build of higher cloud across the south later, creating more hazy spells of sunshine. Otherwise, another hot day in the south, but still a little less warm across the east.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm so very glad that the conversation in the breaks is not Ofcom regulated. Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen, to news coming out of the United States, and that is that the preliminary cause of death for key Trump ally Lindsey Graham has been revealed by medical examiners who say the 71-year-old likely passed away due to a heart issue. President Trump led tributes to the US Senator from South Carolina, who was a leading foreign policy voice within the Republican Party. Graham was a vocal supporter of American involvement in conflicts abroad, including both Ukraine and Iran. With me now is US political reporter for the Daily Mail, friend of the show, Victoria Churchill. Victoria, great to see you again. This is very sad news, particularly as he was a relatively young man. What has been the response in Washington to the death of Lindsey Graham?
Well, I think the death of Lindsey Graham marks really the end of an era here in Washington. He, for most of his career, marked a kind of old school approach to U.S. foreign policy that were shared by the likes of Senator John McCain and, for example, even some other members that are outgoing. I actually spoke in an exclusive interview with Michael McCall, who is a former chairman of both the House Armed Services as well as the House Homeland Security Committee. And, they really both of them counted McCain as a mentor. And, that kind of approach to foreign policy was rare to see, particularly in this new Trump era. But Trump, of course, paid tribute to Graham earlier today, which was notable. The two of them, former foes in the 2016 presidential race, turned great friends and even Gulf buddies.
He was, of course, a supporter of foreign conflicts, particularly and notably in recent times, the war in Ukraine. That's put him at odds with many members of the Republican Party. With that leading voice supporting the Ukrainians now gone, what does this potentially do for support for Ukraine from the United States, particularly within the Republican Party?
Well, I just mentioned House member Congressman Michael McCall. McCall was actually also in Ukraine on a separate delegation to meet with Zelensky. So, Ukraine does still have allies remaining in the U.S. Congress, particularly in the House. In the Senate, Graham was actually often part of bipartisan efforts to either visit Ukraine, facilitate meetings with Ukraine and the U.S. And so Senator Richard Blumenthal, who is a Democrat, he, like I said, he and Graham worked closely on this issue, and so I think he will continue to be an ally. But it'll be interesting to see kind of out of the up and coming waves of Republican lawmakers if anybody will kind of follow Graham's trajectory or if that will go by the wayside.
Victoria, I'm going to quote The Guardian here, something that I'm not often want to do. His greatest legacy might well be as an example of the sea changes brought about by the era of Donald Trump. At first, Graham was anti-Trump, and then that changed in March 2017 when he had lunch with Trump and emerged joking that he had given the president his new phone number. Trump is committed to rebuilding our military, which is music to my ears. He's in deal-making mode, and I hope Congress is like-minded. Trump turned on the charm and they became golfing buddies. How do you think that transformation from, I guess, is it fair to say kind of that old school country club style Republican to MAGA, what do you think that says about politics or Republican politics in America today? And do you think that is just evidence now that the takeover of the Republican Party by Donald Trump is well and truly complete?
I think to answer your question, Will, I think it's both yes and no. Actually, in Graham's home state of South Carolina, I was down there just a few weeks ago covering the gubernatorial primary race. And even though Trump's preferred pick was the first vote getter in the gubernatorial primary on the Republican side, he ended up coming in with a last minute endorsement for the guy that ended up winning the Republican runoff. And so, I think kind of the question that I had going into that trip was, will Trump kind of have a 3-streak loss of Republican endorsements? And I think the White House saw the writing on the wall and actually moved Trump's endorsement to favor the person that was most likely to win. And so I think Trump wants to still see himself as the forefront of the Republican Party, as somebody who is not only the deal maker, but also the kingmaker. But we've also had some tests of his endorsement. 2 candidates have already lost, particularly in Iowa. There was an incumbent Republican congressman who was running for the governorship there, who lost his primary. And so, I think the White House is trying to make sure that Trump, particularly after these midterms, is not a lame duck. But I think there's already people that are voicing potentially a post-Trump era and what that could look like. For example, Texas Senator Ted Cruz is one name that may potentially run for the presidency in 2028 on the Republican side. Senator Rand Paul, of course, who has, he's also a golf acolyte of President Trump. But, of course, their disagreements are well known within the Republican Party, particularly on Capitol Hill. So, yeah, that's where things stand here stateside.
Separate but related question on another Republican stalwart, Mitch McConnell, who's also had his fair share of health issues. Do you have any updates on what his current status is, both in terms of his health and in terms of his position within the Republican Party more generally?
So Senator McConnell is not running for re-election this year. The Kentucky Republicans have already had their primaries, so they have their selection for who they're putting forth in that seat. But of course, as you guys flash up this picture here, Senator McConnell released an update earlier this afternoon that he is, working to get back to full health and to be on Capitol Hill, and to hopefully finish out the last few months of his term up until November with no hiccups. But he did also note in that message, given that he has been gone a month, that he wishes his recovery could be taking less time, but at the kind of the pointing in the direction of doctors that he is taking as much time in the hospital as he needs before he gets back to it.
Victoria, great to chat to you as always. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Will.
Let's go to Washington now. Matt, I'll start with you. I imagine that you knew Lindsey Graham personally. What are your reflections on his life and career?
Yeah, well, absolutely. First and foremost, thoughts and prayers are with his friends, family, colleagues, all those who've been impacted by this news. Senator Graham was a force, a positive force in my view, no question about it, and really changed history. Had a huge impact on American history. You take a look at, for example, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Many would argue, including myself, that Supreme Court justice would not be on the bench if it was not for what Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham, did in that hearing in President Trump's first term, really pushing for the justice, but at that time really defending him in what many called an unfair situation, with Democrats pushing back on Kavanaugh. You look at other aspects that he's been touching on throughout his career, foreign policy, for example. But beyond that, he was just a great individual, funny individual. And what's unique is that he and President Trump were once political foes. They ran against each other. Senator Graham endorsed Jeb Bush against President Trump after Senator Graham dropped out of the 2016 presidential election, but then became political allies, golfing buddies. It was just a couple hours ago, is my understanding, that President Trump spoke with Lindsey Graham just hours before his sad death. So, look, the United States, the world, lost an incredible individual in Senator Lindsey Graham. This is someone who served his country, not just in the halls of Congress, but the United States military. This is someone who raised his sister after his parents died. Certainly a man of honor, and he'll certainly be missed, no question about it.
Simon, your reflections?
Yeah, I was just reading an article about some of the things that left-wing commentators have said, and I know we were talking about Ann Widdecombe earlier. Maybe I'm getting old, but I think there's a certain amount of respect that's due to a public servant. He did what he believed was right. He fought for a cause that he believed was right. He wasn't personally enriching himself. He died not a particularly wealthy man. He was a man of conviction and principle. And when I hear Hassan Piker, this lowlife, say LMAO, which means laughing my blank off, Anna Kasparian, a left-wing media commentator, say good riddance, and others say the same thing. It saddens me that we've reached this stage where we can at least acknowledge that he was a public servant who was fighting for causes that he believed. He was a big supporter of Israel and the U.S. relationship with Israel. He was a supporter of Ukraine and its fight against Vladimir Putin and the invasion. So yeah, I think it's a great loss to the Senate. It's a great loss to the United States.
Rest in peace, Lindsey Graham. Let's move on to another story that is making news in tomorrow's papers. A mega dinghy carrying 128 migrants has set a new record for the number of arrivals on a single small boat across the channel. The overloaded vessel beat the previous record of 125 from last summer. The average number of people per boat has exploded in the last 8 years. In 2018, it was 7. In the year ending March 2026, it was 63. The increasing figure reflects efforts by gangs to maximise profits by packing more migrants into each boat. Paul, I'll go to you first. The reason I slightly hesitated there is the term record could, in some respects, be construed positively or as a novelty. And this absolutely is not a positive development. What do you make of this story, and what do you think it says about Labor's efforts to stop the boats?
We certainly don't want to be known as the champions of accepting illegal immigrants. And unfortunately, that is the position we hold, particularly in Europe. However, you're absolutely right. This is just phenomenal, isn't it? The trouble is we talk about this so ubiquitously now, the numbers, mega dinghies, explosions of people coming to the UK. It's almost like we've accepted a certain amount are going to come. Therefore, apathy is creeping in. And that is really dangerous, incredibly dangerous, because that apathy leads to the complete and utter erosion of society within the UK. There's no way you can maintain a society, a good, cohesive society, centred around British culture, if every single day during good weather we have a mass invasion of people that aren't here because they want to embrace British culture or give back to the British people. What they want to do is they want a life personally for themselves, to better themselves. They want it to be better than France, because that's exactly where they come from. You can forget where they come from originally. It's inconsequential by the time you've got to the United Kingdom, because you've already passed through at least 3 or 4 countries which could have housed you quite comfortably. So this is a massive issue, and I wish we'd start, not on this channel of course, but collectively talking about this as an invasion, as a massive issue.
Paul's right, of course, Jonathan. These are all, by definition, economic migrants.
You won't be surprised, Will, to learn that Paul is, of course, not right. No, it's not an invasion. That is a grotesquely irresponsible way of describing desperate people who are trying to come here, and you have no idea. You can't ascribe a universal motive to those people. Maybe some of them will be deemed not to be refugees. That's why we have an asylum system that is meant to determine who is an asylum seeker and who isn't.
I believe
by the way, I don't think that
just to clarify, I believe the point that Paul was making is that since they have come from France and most likely have travelled through several other safe European countries, that they are by definition now shopping for their preferred choice of venue, which makes them an economic migrant.
Well, that is not how refugee law works. That's not how the International Convention of Refugees works. There is absolutely nowhere in that document to which Britain has subscribed that says you must go to the first safe country that you arrive in. That has never been the case. That wasn't the case for Jewish refugees before or after the Second World War. It's not the case for refugees now.
Well, can I slightly rephrase the question then? Why do you think, therefore, that they do choose to come to the UK as opposed to staying in France?
There are all manner of reasons, Will, and we've discussed them many times. It could be because of the English language. We're a victim of our own success, you might say. I don't think it's a bad thing that English is the world's language and that England or Britain is seen as a great place to live. When people want to come to your shop, for example, most shopkeepers don't think that's a sign of them doing badly. It's a sign of them doing well. And so people want to come and if they're fleeing
persecution... That's such a bad analogy.
Paul, if people want to come to this country...
let me just explain, because it seems unfair just to say that out there. But if you go into a shop, there's an exchange of something in order to get something else. What's the exchange from the illegal immigrants coming on the boats? What are they giving us in return?
They're not illegal immigrants, Paul. They are asylum seekers.
Don't quibble with the language, though. Deal with the substance of the question.
What are they hoping? Well, the first thing, if they are legitimate asylum seekers, then clearly the first thing they are trying to get out of it is safety, and that is something that every single country, every single developed country in the world has signed up to. The idea that if there are people fleeing persecution or war from parts of the world, they can claim asylum, they can have sanctuary in another place. That is why we open our door to Ukrainians.
I think he's talking about the value that this country gets out of it, not the value for the refugees.
Well, I mean, I don't really understand the question. I mean, what value do we get from doing the right thing? What value do we get from being part of a global community that says there are problems around the world and we have to do our bit relative to our size and wealth and power to help solve these problems, rather than saying, well, if you're fleeing that country, it's the country to your right that's responsible for it. And by the way, the vast majority of refugees are in the first safe country. They're either internally displaced inside the countries that are being engulfed in chaos, or they're in the next countries. That's why you have millions of refugees in places like Lebanon and Jordan, and also when you look at the Rohingya refugees, for example, in Bangladesh, etc.
Paul, specifically to that point, that really the value for this country is doing the right thing.
Look. Doing the right thing is inextricably linked to something we keep calling colloquially kindness, and there has to be a limit on that. You're not just kind one way. This is the whole point. That's why I think the shop analogy doesn't work, because that's an exchange, goods for money. Okay, so what are they giving us? If we are being kind to them, that has to have a limit.
It's about kindness.
Because there are so many other millions of people involved in that transaction. Every time you accept an asylum seeker, let's use your language, that affects the services by which everybody else in the incumbent country is affected, and affects those services to them. Because we are so overly kind and so overly good, then we are demonstrably doing something that harms ourselves.
No. That suggests that these people are going to be a complete dead weight for the rest of their lives. Asylum seekers can go on. First of all, they go on to work. Some of them might do low-skilled work, which we need. Just like immigrants come from around the country to do jobs that British people don't want to do. Asylum seekers are not allowed to work, by the way, when they come here. So they have to be a drain on resources, because they're not allowed to work. In some countries, they can work pretty much immediately. And then, obviously, the people can go on to be full members of the society and to contribute.
But disproportionately, they do not do that, Jonathan. Disproportionately, they do not do that. Per capita, they do not do that. If they did that, you probably wouldn't even wouldn't even be having this discussion. If they were disproportionately giving a benefit to the country, then the emphasis would be the other way around. What are the people of the incumbent country not doing enough? Because look at these people, they're putting us to shame. That's not true. They're disproportionately drawing down benefits, disproportionately committing a certain number of crimes. So it is a massive
coming from
problem.
very, very difficult circumstances, and obviously it's going to be very difficult for them to integrate in lots of ways. I'm not saying there aren't problems and challenges. I'm not saying it's a utopian thing where all these people are going to come and it's going to be fantastic. Of course, that's not the case. But people do deserve a chance to flee persecution and war and all the other sort of problems that we have in the world, and to try and make a better life for themselves.
I had to pull this up because I recall reporting on this at the time. It was from 1 July 2026, and this was from The Times. It found that 76% of people who were granted the right to stay in the UK on Article 8 grounds last year were unemployed.
But of course, as I just said, there are immense challenges facing people who are coming here and are not allowed to work. Some of them might not speak good English when they arrive here. Obviously, we need to do our bit to, obviously to judge who is a legitimate asylum seeker, but then to help integrate them into society and help them to find work so they can be productive. In the same way that we have problems with all kinds of people in our society who aren't in education or employment or training, and to integrate them so they can contribute and ultimately pay taxes.
I want to get the thoughts of the US. Matt, I'll start with you. This is a problem. Whilst not entirely solved, it's been largely solved by the Trump administration. You must look at the troubles that the UK are having with, I guess, bemusement.
Well, it's a very sad situation in the UK, but we faced it, to your point, Will, here in the United States under President Biden. Under President Biden, we had a wide open border. Under President Trump, he's secured the border. Under President Trump, he's used ICE to deport people who are in this country illegally. I think the UK needs to do many of those same things, have its own version of ICE and also secure its border. But beyond that, it comes down to the cost. And it's not just the cost of not having people properly vetted coming to your country. In our case, we did not have people properly vetted coming under President Biden into the country illegally, committing murders, rape, heinous crimes. So there's obviously that element of it that the people of the UK need to be concerned about. The vetting of this, of individuals not being properly vetted coming into a country. But beyond that, the financial costs. And the UK is in debt. The UK schools don't have air conditioning. I've read one report that you don't have enough prisons in the UK. In fact, I saw in a report that you may very well have the UK letting up to 6,000 prisoners out of prisons because you can't build enough prisons in the UK. You can't afford to take on this level of migration, and it's 128 people on this vessel. I saw one report that showed roughly over 12,000 people in the country this year alone coming off of these migrant boat crossings. This is not sustainable, and I think many people across the UK say, how does this make us better? How is this right for the people of the UK? How is this right for the country? Just like many of the voters who voted for President Trump in 2024 saw that we had a broken system under President Biden. We did not have a secure border, and we had a massive problem with people coming into the country illegally, committing heinous acts. Part of this is national security, and the other part of it is ensuring the financial security of your country. The UK has massive debt issues. You cannot afford to take on this migration problem.
Simon, I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, I'm trying to compress 265 articles into a minute here. Jonathan is exhibiting suicidal empathy right here. You are letting in hundreds, thousands per week of young men with absolutely no criminal background checks. We know that the countries many of them come from have extraordinarily higher rates of sexual violence. That's why there were 70,000 rapes in the UK last year versus 1,500 in 1986. Some of that is due to the influx of people from North Africa, the Middle East, and other countries where rates of sexual violence are much higher. Economically, no, they don't speak English. It's like you're inviting them into your store and letting them shoplift for free. It's going to cost you £38,000 a year to keep them up until you've got their cases decided. When their cases are decided, they're going to appeal. Most of them are going to be able to stay, and over a lifetime, they're going to suck more out of your system in healthcare, education, and benefits for their families than they're going to contribute with the mostly low-skilled jobs, if they get a job at all, that they're going to get. There is a limit to what any country can do, and there is no international right to go to the country you most want to go to that's the softest touch for benefits. And it's like watching your best, oldest friend drink themselves to death, watching what Britain is doing with migration.
Yeah, that's how we felt about you. Well, actually.
We don't.
Well, a lot of us do, Paul. Well, majority.
Well, I'll let the viewers and listeners draw their own conclusions on that one. I've got to read a statement from the Home Office, who have said that this crossing serves as a stark reminder that criminal gangs have no regard for the safety of those they claim to help. The reality is clear and lives are being lost in the channel as a result. This is exactly why we have signed a new deal with the French to prevent these perilous journeys by boosting enforcement actions on beaches, building on the over 445,000 attempted crossings stopped since the election. Moving on, the Daily Mail are reporting that Whitehall officials called for minority groups to feature more on banknotes as they claimed figures such as Winston Churchill give a limited view of British identity. Civil servants at the Office for Equality and Opportunity, I can't believe we have an Office for Equality and Opportunity, which is part of the Cabinet Office. It was revealed to have made the comments in a letter to the Bank of England. They said there should be greater representation of women, disabled people, ethnic minority communities and LGBT plus individuals. Paul, I guess a prefacing question. Why on earth do we have an Office for Equality and Opportunity?
Well, it's the sort of thing that's cooked up by Jonathan and his people. That's why these are...
my people, or gay people.
You're looking at me as if that's the maddest thing I've ever said. I'm seriously terrified of a whole group of people just like you. So perhaps I should have phrased that slightly differently.
Don't take the bait, Paul. Go on.
Yeah, look, if this was a just society and everything was equal and everyone believed the same way as myself and the American panel did, then I'd be quite happy to have one, because it would make sense to have one. But all the time that there are sort of disingenuous, overly progressive left-wingers in the world using it there for their benefit, I'm glad that we didn't have it.
Jonathan?
I mean, it's silly. I mean, he honestly cares about this stuff. I mean...
Well, this stuff costs money. There's obviously a whole bureaucracy around equality and opportunity. The country's going bankrupt. Like, this stuff actually does. It's not just symbolic. This stuff matters.
The country is not going bankrupt, Will. Absolutely, that is categorically
okay, we can argue, we can quibble about that. The fiscal position of this country is not good.
Well,
we can't just spend money on this stuff.
Yeah, well, we have to have banknotes, and the banknotes they can't just be blank piece of paper saying this is £5. So something needs to be on them, and we have had figures from Britain's history for the last, I think, 60 years on our banknotes. Before that, I think we didn't have them. But actually, no, we did. We didn't have the monarch actually until the 1960s. I think that's what it is. Anyway, so we've had these figures for a certain number of decades, and now they've replaced them with, was it like plants or something, or animals? Which I think is a huge mistake, actually. I think we should have had people, because people are what makes this country. And so I think that you can have... Of course, if you can find a great disabled person from Britain's history, of course, put them on a banknote. Who cares? What? If you can find, if there's a great person from, of an ethnic minority, obviously there wouldn't have been that many people from an ethnic minority in Britain from the 19th century, for example, from where most of
There'd be some Scottish people you could probably put on there, though.
I don't think that's an ethnic minority, Paul.
Why is Churchill for parts of the left, such a unique hate figure?
He's not a unique hate figure. I think people...
You're right, there are several hate figures for the left. Why is he one of several hate figures for the left?
Because his views were extremely atrocious in many ways. I don't think that's not controversial. If I were to read you a list of things that Churchill said, not even you would be able to defend them, Will. That doesn't mean he didn't do fantastic things. Doesn't mean he wasn't a great Prime Minister. Doesn't mean he didn't save us from the Nazis. All these things are true. I think that we can be grown up about this and have a rounded view of historical figures and say that they did some great things, and they also believed some truly appalling things which would not be acceptable today. I don't see why we have to have this simplistic, 100% good or 100% bad.
We're running short of time. As much as I would love to defend Churchill, I've got to get these government responses in. A government spokesman said decisions on banknote design are for the Independent Bank of England, not ministers, and it has run its own public consultation as part of its work to periodically update notes so it can strengthen security features. Officials engaged with the consultation as part of normal due process, as they did under the previous government during the last review in 2013. Let's go to the Bank of England, whose spokesman has said to select the theme for our next series of banknotes. The bank canvassed a range of opinions through a public consultation last year. The results of this consultation drove the decision to select nature as the theme. The nature theme received the highest proportion of nominations in the public consultation and received positive feedback in bank commission focus groups. Oh, that was sensational. They don't pay me enough on this channel. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have time for this evening. This is an evening that has been marked by tragedy with the death of Anne Widdecombe. We reiterate strength and love to her family and friends. Thank you very much to my panel. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you, Simon, in Washington, D.C. That's all from us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Bev Turner will be back with you on The Late Show Live tomorrow night. Have a wonderful rest of your morning. Thank you for staying with the People's Channel, GB News.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This week brings more sunshine, remaining very warm, if not locally hot in some places, and still often rather windy across the south. Some spots of low cloud through the early hours of this morning. This will bring some rain across parts of East Anglia, central England, perhaps parts of Lincolnshire as well, eventually clearing through the course of the morning, and you can see plenty of clear skies across the UK for the afternoon. Away from the northeast of Scotland, some low cloud lingering here. Another very warm day on the cards, particularly across the south. We could still reach around 30 degrees Celsius here, but in a brisk easterly breeze, still feeling that little bit cooler along some eastern coasts. Now, later this evening, we could start to see a little bit of a change. Some more cloud pushing up across the south, eventually some showers, maybe even some rumbles of thunder. Otherwise, elsewhere across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, plenty of late evening sunshine to finish off the day. Clear skies, very similar across Scotland, though away from the northeast, where there'll be some low cloud around coastal areas. This eventually through the course of the night will continue to drag its way back westwards across Scotland. And that's a very similar picture elsewhere across England. Some moisture still feeding in from an easterly breeze off the North Sea, and this will progress its way westwards overnight. Any showers across the south soon clearing by the early hours of the morning, and a little fresher for some, but still across the south another warm night, temperatures not dropping past 16 to 17 degrees. Now on Tuesday, it's a very similar picture to what we've had the last few days. There will be some cloud around to start. It'll eventually clear through the morning, and then there'll be wall-to-wall blue skies across many areas. Still some lingering low cloud across the northeast of Scotland, perhaps lingering around some coastal areas, and a build of higher cloud across the south later, creating more hazy spells of sunshine. Otherwise, another hot day in the south, but still a little less warm across the east.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me. Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to
stop.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The GB News audience is different, it's unique, because they see through the nonsense.
We want to debate with each other, we want to listen and maybe learn.
We have a chat, that's what we do, we try and have a chat.
They'll watch my programme while they're eating their tea, they'll watch breakfast while they're busy getting their kids ready for school.
We want to hear what matters to you, what is news for you.
And what's brought you out here today?
What are the biggest issues affecting this particular area?
The audience are the best thing about GB News.
Their friends, their family. They're people who need to have their voices heard.
They're passionate about the channel, they're passionate about what they believe in.
The one thing about GB News is you get a chance to speak.
Talk to me about why so many people have gathered here today.
Do you want to say something back in return? The GB News audience is what makes GB News special.
It's incredible to see.
They shape our programmes, they shape our output, and they shape our channel.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good evening, it's 9 o'clock. I'm Alex Armstrong. Tonight.
So the UK is doubling down on the fight against climate change.
Right, well, climate reparations, what do you think of those? Trillions of pounds. That's what a foreign court wants you all to pay. Also,
England in those days was lovely. But so different.
England is 1,099 years old today, but it seems our identity is still under attack. And
that's why we have to have an early release scheme. That's why we passed the Sentencing Act, and we're putting community powers locally to make sure that we protect the public.
A watchdog has warned the public are at risk as probation hostels close due to staffing issues. And well, of course, we're going to be talking about the incredible victory of the Three Lions last night over Norway. And we'll talk about what's going on inside Argentina's changing rooms. They seem to be chanting for certain islands somewhere. On my panel tonight, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers MP, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and political commentator Juditha De Silva. Massive 2 hours of TV coming your way. But first, we're going to get your news with Lewis Mackenzie.
Good evening. Here are your latest GB News headlines. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of murdering former